Story 1. My daughter said that her father's new wife isn't a failure like me, until I took everything away from her. My name is Rachel. I'm 42 years old, and I've been working as an accountant for over 20 years. Until 3 days ago, I considered myself a failure. At least that's what my daughter, Emma, constantly repeated. Today, as I type this story, I'm sitting in my renovated apartment drinking wine that cost more than I used to spend on myself in an entire month. And I can say with certainty, I wasn't the failure in this story. It all started on a Tuesday in March at La Paloma Mexican restaurant in downtown. I had invited Emma for lunch in a desperate attempt to reconnect our relationship that seemed more distant with each phone call. She was in her second year at Northwestern University, a university that I religiously paid for, dispersing $28,000 per year from my hard-earned accountant's salary. Emma arrived 20 minutes late, as always, wearing a dress I didn't recognize. Probably a gift from Olivia, my ex-husband Matthew's new wife. She barely greeted me, already sitting down and fiddling with her phone, as if I were an inconvenient interruption in her schedule. "Mom, I need to talk to you about the car," she said without even raising her eyes from the screen. "That Toyota you gave me is embarrassing me on campus. Olivia said she can help me get something better." I felt my stomach twist. That 2019 Toyota Corolla wasn't new, but it was in perfect condition and had cost $15,000 from my savings. "Emma, that car is reliable and safe. You should be grateful." She finally raised her eyes, and the expression I saw there cut me like a knife. "Mom, you don't understand. Olivia drives a convertible Mercedes. She understands what it means to have style unlike you." I tried to stay calm, ordering our drinks from the waitress who approached. But Emma wasn't finished. For the next 40 minutes as we ate, she made a point of comparing every aspect of my life with Olivia's. My modest 2-bedroom house versus the mansion that Matthew and Olivia had bought. My practical Target clothes versus the designer pieces Olivia wore. My useful gifts versus the expensive spa days that Olivia financed. "You know, Mom," she said, chewing her quesadilla, "sometimes I wonder how you and Dad ended up together. He clearly evolved, found someone who understands what success in life is. Olivia has class, has ambition. She's not a failure like." She stopped, looked around, and realized other people were listening, but the damage was done. The word failure echoed across the table like a slap in the face. "Like me," I completed, my voice coming out lower than I intended. Emma shrugged as if she were just stating an obvious fact. "Don't take it personally, Mom. It's just that Olivia really has it all together. She's inspiring." I paid the bill in silence, ignoring the curious glances from other customers. I dropped Emma off at the dorm without saying a word and drove home with trembling hands on the wheel. That night, sitting alone in my kitchen, looking at the piles of bills I paid monthly, including my ungrateful daughter's university tuition, I finally understood something I had denied for 4 years. For years. That was how long it had been since Matthew left me for Olivia, his 28-year-old secretary. 4 years since my life had become a roller coaster of alimony payments, educational expenses, and the slow erosion of my self-esteem. For years watching Matthew rebuild his life with a woman who hadn't contributed a penny to raising our daughter, but who now reaped all the benefits of being the fun mom. I remember perfectly the day he left me. I was organizing Emma's 16th birthday party, worried about every detail, when he simply announced that he had found his true happiness. Olivia was pregnant. A pregnancy that I later discovered had begun months before he told me about the affair. The divorce process was brutal. Matthew, who had been a mediocre husband and an absent father, suddenly became Man of the Year. He fought for custody not because he wanted to be a father, but because Olivia had painted a fantasy of a perfect family in his mind. I ended up with shared custody. But in practice, Emma spent more and more time at his house. The house that I had helped pay for during 15 years of marriage became his and Olivia's property. I moved to a rented apartment and watched my teenage daughter become dazzled by the glamorous life that Olivia offered. Spa days, shopping at expensive boutiques, vacations at resorts, all financed by the salary that Matthew earned as a sales manager. the same job he had throughout our marriage, but which now mysteriously seemed to yield much more. What Emma didn't know, and what I never had the courage to tell, was that I paid much more than just her education. The divorce agreement stipulated that I pay child support until she turned 21, as well as cover all medical, educational, and transportation expenses. Matthew contributed $300 a month, a ridiculous amount that barely covered a week of expenses with Emma. While Olivia flaunted her $1,000 dresses and took Emma to five-star restaurant lunches, I was working overtime to keep my daughter's health insurance active. While they took pictures at luxurious spas to post on Instagram, I was saving every penny to ensure that Emma had everything she needed at university. But in my daughter's mind, I was the failure. I was the mother who gave boring gifts like books and practical clothes. I was the one who worried about budgets and bank accounts. I was the one who said no when she wanted something extravagant. Olivia was the one who said yes to everything because she didn't have to pay the real bills. That night, after the humiliating lunch, I did something I had never done before. I called my sister, Megan, who lived in Portland, and unburdened myself. For 2 hours, I told her everything. Years of unrecognized sacrifices, of being treated like an emotional ATM, of watching my daughter despise me while idolizing a woman who had never sacrificed anything for her. "Rachel," Megan said, her voice firm through the phone, "you realize you're being used, don't you? You realize they've created a system where you pay for everything and Olivia takes all the credit." I knew. I always knew. But admitting it meant admitting that I had failed as a mother, that I had raised a daughter who didn't respect me. It meant admitting that 20 years of sacrifices had been in vain. "What do I do, Megan? She's my daughter. I can't just stop." "Of course you can," she interrupted me. "Emma is 20, Rachel. She's an adult. And adults need to understand that actions have consequences." I hung up the phone at 2 o'clock in the morning but couldn't sleep. I stayed in the kitchen drinking tea and looking at the laptop open on the table. On the screen were all the bills I paid monthly: university tuition, car insurance, health insurance, credit cards she used for emergencies that included expensive clothes and dinners at restaurants that I could never afford for myself. At 4 in the morning, I made a decision that would change our lives forever. I opened each of the online accounts and started making changes. I canceled the additional credit card. I called the university and froze future payments. I canceled the car insurance. And lastly, I used the tracking app to locate the Toyota that was parked at Emma's dorm. At 6 o'clock in the morning, I drove to Northwestern with a tow truck I had rented. I found the car exactly where the GPS indicated. Using my spare key, I started the engine and put it on the tow truck. Some students looked on curiously, but nobody questioned a middle-aged woman recovering her own vehicle. When I got home, it was dawning. I put the Toyota keys in the kitchen drawer and went to take a shower. For the first time in 4 years, I felt something I had completely forgotten: control. I was in control of my own life. The first call came at 9 o'clock in the morning. Emma was hysterical. "Mom, my card isn't working. I tried to buy coffee and it was declined. And where's my car? It's not in the parking lot." I was at the office reviewing tax spreadsheets when I answered. My voice came out calmer than I expected. "I canceled the card, Emma, and I recovered the car." "What? You can't do that. I need those things." "You need or you want?" I asked, continuing to type. Because until yesterday, from what I understood, I was just a failure who didn't understand anything about success in life. So I thought, maybe Olivia, who is so successful and inspiring, can help with these responsibilities. There was silence on the other end of the line. Then the crying began. Not the crying of a hurt child, but the manipulative crying that Emma had perfected since adolescence. "Mom, you can't do this to me. I have exams next week. I need to concentrate on my studies." "Great," I answered. "Studying is exactly what you should be doing at university, not spending money on expensive restaurants and designer clothes." "But how am I going to get places? How am I going to eat?" I sighed. "Emma, you're at a university with a cafeteria, public transportation, and thousands of other students who survive without an unlimited credit card. You'll figure out a way." She hung up on me. 10 minutes later, my phone rang again. This time it was Matthew. Rachel, what the hell do you think you're doing? His voice was loud, authoritative, the same tone he used when he wanted to make me feel small during our marriage. I'm stopping paying for a daughter who disrespects me, I answered, surprising myself with my own firmness. You can't just cancel everything. We have an agreement. I do. And if you read the clauses, you'll discover that I have the right to suspend financial support if Emma demonstrates extreme ingratitude or disrespectful behavior. My lawyer explained this to me yesterday. This was a lie. I hadn't spoken to any lawyer. But Matthew didn't know that, and his hesitation confirmed to me that he also didn't know the details of the agreement he had signed 4 years ago. Look, Rachel, I know Emma sometimes speaks without thinking, but she's young. She's 20. Matthew, when I was 20, I was already working 2 jobs to pay for my own college. Maybe it's time for her to learn some responsibility. You're being ridiculous. Olivia is very upset about this whole situation. The mention of Olivia made me laugh. A short, bitter laugh. Oh, Olivia is upset. Too bad. Maybe she can use some of her inspiration in class to help our daughter. You know, our financial situation doesn't allow. What financial situation? Matthew, you just bought a Mercedes for Olivia. You went to Cancun last month. So don't come to me with stories of financial difficulties. There was another silence. Then his tone changed. It became softer, more manipulative. Rachel, honey, I know you're hurt about what happened yesterday, but you can't punish our daughter because of it. Don't call me honey, I replied, feeling a cold anger rise up my spine. And I'm not punishing anyone. I'm just stopping facilitating unacceptable behavior. But she needs things. How is she going to get around? How is she going to eat? The same way millions of other college students do, with responsibility and creativity. Or maybe you and Olivia can take on some of these parental responsibilities. He hung up without answering. 2 minutes later, my phone rang again. Olivia. Rachel, we need to talk. Her voice had that artificially sweet tone she used when she wanted something. About what, Olivia? About this whole situation with Emma. I know you're upset, but you need to think about her well-being. I've thought about her well-being for 20 years, I replied. Time for you to think about it, too. You know, our situation is complicated. Complicated how? You have money for spas, expensive clothes, luxury cars, but not to help with the expenses of your husband's daughter. There was a pause. It's not that simple, Rachel. I have my own expenses, my own responsibilities. Oh, of course. And what are your responsibilities, Olivia? Because from what I see, you have time to take Emma for expensive lunches and shopping. But you don't have any financial responsibility. I contribute emotionally. Emma needs a strong female figure in her life. The irony was so absurd. I almost laughed. A strong female figure. Olivia, you're a 32-year-old woman who has never had a real job, who lives off her husband's salary, and who convinced a 20-year-old girl that I'm a failure because I pay the bills instead of showing off. That's not fair. You know what's not fair? Spending 4 years paying $28,000 a year for education, plus insurance, plus credit card, plus all the expenses, while you take the credit for being the fun mom. You know what's not fair? Being called a failure by a daughter who never had to work a day in her life. Rachel, you're being very dramatic. Dramatic? Olivia, you want to know what's dramatic? It's discovering that you spent $300 at a spa last week. Money that technically came from the salary that Matthew should be using to support his daughter, while I cut my own health insurance to continue paying for hers. Total silence on the other end of the line. So, here's the deal, I continued. You want Emma to have all these nice things? Great. Pay for them. You want her to have a car? Buy one. You want her to have a credit card? Put it in your names. But I'm done being the silent ATM while you take all the credit. You can't do this to her, Olivia screamed, and for the first time, I heard real desperation in her voice. Of course I can. She's an adult. And adults need to learn that you can't bite the hand that feeds you. I hung up the phone and put it on silent. For the rest of the day, I received 14 missed calls. 8 from Emma, 4 from Matthew, and 2 from Olivia. I ignored them all. At 6 o'clock in the evening, when I got home, I found a text message from Emma. "Mom, please. I need the car back. I promise I'll be more respectful." I typed the response. "Respect isn't something you promise, Emma. It's something you demonstrate with actions, not words." She replied immediately, "But I need to go to work." "What work?" I replied. There was no response. That night, I prepared dinner just for myself. Grilled salmon with asparagus. Something I never did because Emma didn't like fish. I opened a bottle of wine that had been saved for months and sat on the small balcony of my apartment watching the sunset. For the first time in 4 years, I didn't have to worry if Emma had arrived safely at the dorm. I didn't have to check if she had spent too much on the credit card. I didn't have to worry if she was safe driving at night because, for the first time in 4 years, these responsibilities were no longer just mine. My phone rang at 10 at night. It was a number I didn't recognize. "Hello, Rachel. This is Samantha, Emma's roommate." My heart raced. "What happened? Is she okay?" "She's physically fine, but she's having a crisis. She's been crying for hours, saying you abandoned her. Some friends brought pizza to the room because she has no money to eat." I felt a pang of guilt, but took a deep breath. "Samantha, Emma is an adult. She has resources. There's a cafeteria at the university. There are student assistance programs. There's the possibility of getting a part-time job. She just never needed to use any of these resources before. But she's really bad, Miss Stone. I've never seen her like this. Thank you for calling, Samantha. I know you're worried about your friend, but sometimes people need to go through difficulties to grow. Emma will be fine." When I hung up, my hands were trembling. Part of me wanted to run to the car, drive to the dorm, and fix everything. But another part, a part that had been silent for a long time, reminded me of the words Emma had said at the restaurant. Failure. No, I wasn't a failure. I was a woman who had raised a daughter, supported a family, maintained a stable job for 2 decades, and survived a devastating divorce. I was a woman who had been disrespected and humiliated, but who still had enough strength to defend her own dignity. Emma needed to learn that actions have consequences, and I needed to learn that it wasn't my responsibility to protect her from all the consequences of her own choices. I finished my wine and went to bed. For the first time in months, I slept through the night without interruptions. The weekend passed in relative silence. My phone kept ringing, but I had blocked the numbers of Matthew, Olivia, and Emma. I needed peace to think, to process what I had done, and more importantly, to decide how to move forward. On Saturday, I did something I hadn't done in years. I went to the mall alone, not to buy anything necessary, but simply to look at the store windows and remember what it was like to have time for myself. I stopped in front of a women's clothing store and realized I hadn't bought anything for myself besides basic work clothes in more than 2 years. I entered the store and tried on a navy blue dress. It cost $150, exactly what I spent on Emma in a typical week. I bought it without hesitation. On Sunday, I called Megan. She answered on the second ring. "How are you feeling?" she asked immediately. "Scared," I admitted, "but also free." "Strange. Has Emma called you?" "She tried. I blocked her number." "Good. Megan, do you think I did the right thing? I mean, she's my daughter." "Rachel, stop. She's your adult daughter. There's a difference. You raised a capable, intelligent, and healthy person. Now it's time for her to prove it. But what if she really can't make it on her own? What if? What if she can? What if she discovers she's stronger than she thought? What if she learns to value what you did for her all these years?" I spent Sunday cleaning the apartment, something I always did hurriedly between calls from Emma or worries about her needs. This time, I cleaned every corner calmly, putting on loud music and even dancing a little. When I finished, I looked around and realized that my apartment was small, but cozy. It was mine. On Monday, I was returning from work when I found Matthew waiting in the parking lot of my building. He looked tired, older than I remembered. "We need to talk," he said, getting out of the car. "No, we don't," I replied, walking past him towards the entrance. "Rachel, please. 5 minutes." I stopped but didn't turn around. 5 minutes. Emma is desperate. She can't go anywhere. She has no money for anything beyond the cafeteria, which is exactly what millions of students do. I interrupted. She called Olivia crying, asking for financial help. That caught my attention. I turned to face him, and Matthew ran his hand through his hair. And Olivia? Well, she said our financial situation doesn't allow us to take on all these responsibilities at once. Interesting. So, the woman who is so successful and inspiring can't help the stepdaughter she so adores. It's not like that, Rachel. It's that it's a lot of expenses. $28,000 a year plus insurance plus credit card plus car. Exactly, I said, feeling a cold satisfaction. It's a lot of expenses. Expenses that I assumed alone while you enjoyed the benefits. But you always handled it. You have a stable job. I have a stable job because I worked for it. I pay these bills because I made that choice. But now I'm making a different choice. Rachel, be reasonable. You can't just abandon our daughter. I didn't abandon anyone. I stopped facilitating her disrespectful behavior and your dependence. There's a difference. Matthew was silent for a moment. Then he tried a different approach. Look, I know Emma said things that hurt you. She was wrong, but she's young. She didn't mean. Of course she meant it. I interrupted. She meant every word. And you know why? Because you and Olivia spent 4 years brainwashing her, making her believe that I am inferior to you because I pay the bills instead of showing off. That's not. It's true, Matthew. You created a system where I'm the boring mom who says no and worries about money, while Olivia is the fun mom who says yes to everything. But you forgot one detail. I'm the one who makes it possible for Olivia to say yes. He didn't answer. He knew I was right. So, here's what's going to happen, I continued. You want Emma to have all these perks? Great. Pay for them. You want her to respect me? She's going to have to earn that back. Because I'm done being treated like a failure by people who depend on me. And if we can't pay for everything, then you'll have to make choices, won't you? Just like me. Just like any responsible adult. Matthew stood there for a moment, clearly frustrated. Rachel, you're being cruel. Cruel? Matthew, cruel is spending 4 years letting our daughter disrespect me. Cruel is allowing your wife to humiliate me indirectly through our daughter. Cruel is treating me like an ATM while taking all the credit for being the cool parents. We never. Of course you did. When was the last time Emma thanked me for paying for her education? When was the last time she acknowledged that I sacrificed my own quality of life to give her opportunities that I never had? When was the last time you included me in any important decision about her life? He couldn't answer because we knew the answer was never. So no, Matthew, I'm not going back. Emma is an intelligent and capable adult. Time for her to prove it. He left without saying anything else. I went up to my apartment and prepared dinner, feeling strangely at peace. I was watching a documentary when the phone rang. It was an unknown number. Hello, Mom. Emma's voice was probably from crying so much. Emma, Mom, please. I need you to forgive me. I didn't mean to say those things. I was angry. I don't know why. You know why, Emma? You said those things because it's what you really think. That's not true. I love you, Mom. You know I love you. Loving and respecting are different things, I replied. You can love me and still consider me a failure. You can love me and still disrespect me. I don't disrespect you, Emma. You called me a failure in public. You spent 4 years comparing me unfavorably with Olivia, a woman who never contributed a penny to your upbringing. You always accepted my sacrifices as if they were obligations, but never acknowledged what they meant. I heard her sob on the other end of the line. Mom, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. Please forgive me. I forgive you, Emma. But forgiveness doesn't mean things will go back to how they were. What do you mean? I mean, you're an adult now, and adults need to take responsibility for their choices and their words. But I need the car. I need the credit card. How am I going to? You'll figure it out. Just like millions of other college students figure it out. Mom, please don't do this to me. I promise I'll be different. I don't want promises, Emma. I want real change. And those changes start with you taking responsibility for your own life. But I don't know how. Then it's time to learn. Mom, I love you. Please don't abandon me. I'm not abandoning you, Emma. I'm giving you the opportunity to grow, to become the independent and strong person I always knew you could be. But what if I can't do it? Then you'll discover that you're stronger than you think, just like me. I hung up the phone and cried. I cried because it hurt. I cried because it was necessary. I cried because for the first time in 20 years, I had chosen my own dignity instead of making life easier for my daughter. At 10 at night, I received a text message from an unknown number. Miss Stone, this is Josh from Northwestern. I'm Emma's friend. She asked me to tell you that she got a part-time job at the university library. She wanted you to know. I smiled through the tears. Maybe it would work. Maybe she really was stronger than I thought. 3 weeks passed. Emma called regularly, but our conversations were different. She didn't ask for money directly, but always mentioned her difficulties. How hard it was to work in the library for just $12 an hour. How humiliating it was to use public transportation. How her friends were beginning to notice that she could no longer participate in expensive social activities. On a Thursday night, she called crying again. This time it seemed different, more desperate. Mom, I can't take it anymore. I'm exhausted from working and studying. I barely have time to sleep. My classmates are getting better grades because they can dedicate themselves just to studies. I'm harming my future because of your hurt pride. My hurt pride, I repeated, feeling the familiar anger rise. Yes, you're punishing me because I hurt your feelings. But that's not fair, Mom. I'm your daughter. You should support me unconditionally. Unconditional support? I muttered. Emma, do you know how many times I worked late to pay your bills? How many times I canceled personal plans to meet your needs? How many times I sacrificed things I wanted to ensure you had everything? I know, Mom, and I'm grateful. No, you're not. You never were. You always accepted my sacrifices as if they were natural obligations, as if I owed this to you. But you do. You're my mother. And there it was, the raw truth she had never admitted before. I owed her. I owed her everything simply for existing. Emma, I said, my voice becoming firmer. I raised you for 20 years. I supported you, educated you, protected you, and loved you. I fulfilled all my obligations as a mother. You are an adult now. My obligations have ended. You can't do this. Other mothers don't do this. Other daughters don't call their mothers failures in public, I replied. I've apologized for that 1,000 times. Apologizing doesn't undo what was said, Emma. It doesn't undo years of disrespect and ingratitude. So that's it. You're going to punish me forever. I'm not punishing you. I'm giving you the chance to grow, to become independent, to value the things you have. But I don't want to be independent yet. I want to finish my education in peace. And you can. There are student loans, scholarships, assistance programs. There are many ways to pay for an education that don't involve depending on the failure mother. Mom, please. No, Emma. My decision is final. You are an intelligent and capable adult. Prove it. I hung up the phone and realized I no longer felt guilt. I felt something different. I felt relief. The next morning, I was having coffee when I received a call from Olivia. This time, she wasn't trying to be sweet. Rachel, this needs to stop. You're being ridiculous. Good morning to you too, Olivia. Emma is suffering. She's working until she's exhausted. Her grades are falling. Her grades are falling. Interesting. She told me she was working 12 hours a week at the library. That barely counts as part-time. Well, she's under a lot of emotional stress. Emotional stress from having to take on responsibilities like an adult. You're being cruel, Rachel. A real mother wouldn't do this. A real mother? I repeated. Olivia, do you want to know what a real mother does? A real mother wakes up at 5 in the morning to work overtime to pay for her daughter's education. A real mother gives up vacations, new clothes, dinners at restaurants to ensure her daughter has everything she needs. I know you sacrificed. You don't know anything. You spent 4 years playing fun mom with the money I earned. You took my daughter to spas that cost more than I spend on myself in 6 months. You bought clothes for her that cost more than my rent. I was being generous. You were being generous with my money because every dollar Matthew spent on you was a dollar he wasn't contributing to Emma's expenses. Olivia was silent for a moment. Look, Rachel, I understand that you're upset, but you need to think about what's best for Emma. I am thinking about what's best for her. For the first time in 20 years, I'm thinking about what's really best for her in the long run. And what's best for her is to suffer. What's best for her is to learn that her actions have consequences. That she can't disrespect the people who love her and expect them to continue doing everything for her. But you're her mother. Exactly. I'm her mother, not you. So stop pretending that you care about her well-being when you only care about your own convenience. That's not true. Of course it is. Of course you like being seen as the cool mom, but you don't want to take on any of the real responsibilities. You want me to keep paying the bills so you can continue being the favorite. Our financial situation is complicated. Your financial situation is complicated because you spend money you don't have on things you don't need. Just like Emma. Just like anyone who never had to work for what they have. Matthew works hard. Matthew earns the same salary he earned when we were married. The difference is that now he has a wife who spends everything on frivolities instead of a wife who saved and invested. Olivia hung up on me. 15 minutes later, Matthew called. Rachel, Olivia is crying. You were very harsh with her. I was honest with her. There's a difference. Look, I know our situation isn't ideal, but you can't just abandon Emma. How many times do I need to say this? I didn't abandon anyone. I stopped facilitating toxic behaviors. Toxic? Rachel, she's our daughter. Exactly. Our daughter, not just mine. So, where's your part in all this? I contribute what I can. You contribute $300 a month. Matthew, $300. You spent more than that on Olivia's last birthday party. That's not fair. You earn more than me. I earn more than you, Matthew? You've been a sales manager for 15 years. I've been an accountant for 15 years. Our salaries are similar. The difference is that you spend everything on luxuries, and I save for responsibilities. But Olivia has needs. What needs? She's 28 years old and doesn't work. What are her needs that are more important than your daughter's education? Silence. Here's the truth, Matthew. You want Emma to have everything, but you don't want to pay for anything. You want her to respect me, but you do nothing to earn respect. You want me to continue being the responsible mother while you are the fun parents. It's not like that. It's exactly like that. And I'm done. You want Emma to have a car, buy one. You want her to have a credit card, put it in your names. You want her to have all the perks, pay for them. But we can't pay for everything at once. Then make choices. Just like me. Just like any responsible adult. Rachel, be reasonable. I am being reasonable. For the first time in 4 years, I'm being completely reasonable. I hung up the phone and sat in silence for a few minutes. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I called the beauty salon and scheduled a haircut and color. Then I called the gym near my apartment and signed up for yoga classes. In the afternoon, I went to the mall and bought 3 new dresses, 2 pairs of shoes, and a makeup set. I spent $800, exactly what I used to spend on Emma in 2 weeks. For the first time in 20 years, I spent money on myself without feeling guilty. That night, I looked in the mirror and barely recognized myself. There was a woman there that I hadn't seen in decades. A woman who wasn't exhausted, who wasn't worried, who wasn't sacrificing everything for someone else. There was a woman who was finally living her own life. My phone rang. It was Emma again. This time I didn't answer. She left a voice message. Mom, please call me back. I need to talk to you. Something happened. I deleted the message without listening to the end. Whatever the emergency was this time, she could solve it herself or call Matthew and Olivia or find an adult solution. For the first time in 20 years, Emma's problems weren't automatically my problems. And that feeling was liberating in a way I had never imagined possible. 2 months passed. My life had changed in ways I never imagined possible. I was attending yoga classes 3 times a week, had enrolled in a ballroom dancing course on Saturdays, and for the first time in years I was going out with friends. Melissa, my coworker, invited me for happy hour on a Friday. I always declined these invitations because I needed to be available for Emma's calls. This time I said yes. "Rachel, you're different," Melissa commented as we drank martinis in a sophisticated downtown bar. "More present, more you. More me," I repeated, smiling. Funny, I had forgotten who me was without just being Emma's mom. "And how does it feel?" "Scary," I admitted, "but also free." It was that night that I met Steve. He was at the bar with coworkers, was an architect, 45 years old, and had a smile that made me feel butterflies in my stomach for the first time in a decade. "Can I offer you a drink?" he asked when Melissa went to the bathroom. "I already have one," I replied, raising my martini. "Then can I keep you company while you finish it?" We talked for 2 hours. He was intelligent, funny, and treated me as if my opinions were important. When he asked for my number, I hesitated for only a second before saying yes. "Do you have children?" I asked when he called me the following Sunday. "I have a 16-year-old son. He lives with his mother, but I spend weekends with him." "And you?" "I have a 20-year-old daughter. She's in college." "Ah, so you're in the empty nest phase. How are you handling it?" "Better than I expected," I answered and realized it was true. Our first date was dinner at an Italian restaurant. Steve was a gentleman, opened the car door for me, pulled out my chair, and asked about my work, my hobbies, my dreams. How long had it been since someone asked about my dreams? "You seem surprised," he commented when I told him about my recent promotion at work. "Surprised about what?" "About the fact that someone is interested in you as a person, not just as a mother." He had hit the nail on the head. During our marriage, Matthew never showed real interest in me as an individual. I was the wife, the mother, the person who organized his life. My identity had become totally defined by what I did for others. "You're right," I admitted. "It's been a long time since someone has seen me as Rachel. Just Rachel." "Well, I'd like to get to know this Rachel better," he said, taking my hand. Meanwhile, Emma's calls continued, but were less frequent. She had stopped crying and begging, replacing this with a more resentful tone. "Mom, I hope you're happy," she said on a Tuesday night. "I got a student loan to cover the expenses you refused to pay." "Great," I replied. "That's exactly what you should have done from the beginning." "You don't understand. I'll leave college owing $50,000. This will affect my entire life, Emma. Most college students leave owing money. It's normal. But it didn't have to be this way. You could have continued helping." "I could have, but I chose not to." "Why?" "Just to punish me. To teach you independence. To teach you responsibility. To teach you that you can't treat people badly and expect them to continue making your life easier." "But $50,000. Mom, it's less than I've already spent on you in the last 2 years, I replied calmly. "And at least now you'll value your education because you're paying for it." "You've changed," she said, and there was something different in her voice. It was no longer desperation or anger. It was recognition. "Yes, I changed, and that change is permanent. I'm going to have to work for years to pay this off. Welcome to adult life, Emma." She hung up without saying goodbye. I wasn't bothered by it. She was beginning to understand that her situation wasn't temporary, that I wouldn't go back on my decision, that she really would have to take responsibility for her own life. 3 weeks later, I was leaving the cinema with Steve when my phone rang. It was Matthew. "Rachel, we need to talk urgently." "No, we don't," I replied, but there was something in his voice that made me hesitate. "What happened?" "Olivia is pregnant again." I stopped in the middle of the sidewalk. And our financial situation is going to get even more complicated. We won't be able to help Emma with anything in the coming years." "Matthew, that's not my problem. But it's Emma's problem. She's counting on our help." Then maybe you should have thought about that before deciding to have another child. Rachel, be understanding. You know how expensive it is to have a baby. I know. I had a daughter and raised her alone for 20 years. You didn't raise her alone. Of course I did. Financially, emotionally, practically. You were physically present, but I did all the heavy lifting. That's not true. It is true, Matthew, and you know it is. So don't call me asking for understanding for a situation that you created. But Emma is an adult. She'll have to figure out how to deal with this just like any other adult. Rachel, please. No. You made adult decisions. Now deal with the adult consequences. I hung up the phone. Steve was watching me curiously. Family problem? He asked. Ex-family problem? I replied. They're discovering that being an adult is difficult. And how do you feel about that? I thought for a moment. Relieved. For the first time in 20 years, their problems aren't automatically my problems. Steve smiled. You're a very strong woman, Rachel. I'm learning to be, I replied. A week later, I was at work when my boss, Diane, called me into her office. Rachel, I want to offer you a promotion. Senior accounting manager. It comes with a 20% salary increase, but also with more responsibilities and some travel. A year ago, I would have immediately declined. More responsibilities and travel meant less availability for Emma. But now I accept, I said without hesitation. Are you sure? I know you always prioritized flexibility because of your daughter. My daughter is an adult now. It's time for me to prioritize my career. Diane smiled. Good. You deserve this, Rachel. You've always been our most dedicated employee. When I left her office, I felt a euphoria that I hadn't experienced in decades. Not just for the money, but for the recognition. Someone had noticed my work. Someone had valued my dedication. That night, I called Steve to share the news. Let's celebrate, he said. Dinner somewhere special. I'd love that, Steve. I'm proud of you. I know this transition hasn't been easy. It hasn't, I admitted. But it's been necessary. And you're doing incredibly well. For the first time in 20 years, someone was proud of me. Not for being a good mother, not for sacrificing for others, but for taking care of myself, for making difficult but necessary choices. That night, I looked in the mirror and barely recognized the woman I saw there. I was thinner, better dressed, more confident. There was a light in my eyes that I hadn't seen in years. I was finally living my own life, and it was a good life. My phone rang. It was Emma. This time I answered. Mom, I heard you were promoted. Congratulations. Thank you, I replied, surprised by the genuineness in her voice. I wanted to talk to you about some things. Can I visit you this weekend? Sure, but it will have to be Saturday afternoon. I have plans on Friday and Sunday. Plans? I'm dating someone, and I have dance class on Sundays. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Mom, yes, you really have changed, haven't you? Completely. Forever. Forever. Another silence. Okay, I'll come on Saturday afternoon. When I hung up, I realized I didn't feel anxiety about the visit. I didn't feel guilt or expectation. I just felt curiosity about what Emma had to say. For the first time in our relationship, I was in control. Emma arrived at my apartment on Saturday at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. When I opened the door, I almost didn't recognize her. She was thinner, her hair simpler, wearing jeans and a basic t-shirt instead of the designer clothes she used to wear. Hi, Mom, she said hesitantly. Hi, sweetie. Come in. She looked around the apartment and stopped. Wow, you redecorated. I renovated some things, I replied casually. I had bought new furniture, painted the walls, bought artwork. The apartment was unrecognizable, more adult, more elegant, more mine. It's beautiful, she said, and for the first time in years, I heard genuine admiration in her voice. Very sophisticated. Thank you. Would you like coffee or water? Coffee is good. I prepared coffee in my new machine, a gift I had bought for myself, and we sat in the living room. Mom, I wanted to apologize to you, Emma began, her hands shaking slightly, not just for what I said at the restaurant, but for everything, for how I treated you all these years. It's okay, I replied, keeping my voice neutral. No, it's not okay. I was horrible to you. I said terrible things. I disrespected you. I treated you as if you were an employee, not my mother. You're right, I agreed. You treated me badly. She seemed surprised by my direct honesty. I think I didn't realize how much you did for me, how much you sacrificed. Didn't realize or didn't want to realize? Probably didn't want to, she admitted. It was easier to see you as the boring mom who worried about money than to acknowledge that you were holding my entire life in your hands. And now I'm living on my own for the first time. I'm working 20 hours a week, studying, paying my own bills, and it's much harder than I imagined. Welcome to adult life. Mom, I understand why you did what you did. You were trying to teach me responsibility. I was trying to teach myself self-respect, I corrected. Responsibility is a bonus. Emma was silent for a moment. You're really not going to go back on this, are you? No. Even if I beg, even if I promise I'll be different, even then? Why? I sighed. Emma, you're 20 years old. In the next few years, you'll graduate, get a job, maybe get married, have children. You'll build an adult life. I also deserve to build an adult life. But you've always been an adult. No, I've always been a mother. There's a difference. In the last 6 months, for the first time since you were born, I'm being Rachel. Not Emma's mom, just Rachel. And I like who Rachel is. And who is Rachel? I smiled. Rachel is a woman who works hard, who has professional ambitions, who likes to dance, who is in a healthy relationship, who has friends, who spends money on herself without feeling guilty. Are you dating seriously? Yes. Steve is an architect. He's kind, intelligent, and treats me as if I were important. I always treated you as if you were important, she protested. You treated me as if I were useful. There's a difference. Emma started crying. Mom, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. Can you forgive me? I already forgave you, Emma. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean things will go back to how they were. Then how will they be? We'll have to figure it out. You're an adult. I'm an adult. We can have an adult relationship based on mutual respect. But I'm still your daughter. Yes, you are. And I still love you, but you're no longer my responsibility. You're your own responsibility. Emma wiped her eyes. I got a loan to cover the rest of college. I'll graduate owing $50,000. How much do most of your classmates owe? About that, she admitted. Then you're average. It's not the end of the world. Dad said he can't help because Olivia is pregnant again. I heard. And how do you feel about that? Betrayed, she said honestly. I always thought they would help me if you didn't help. But when it came time to really pay the bills, they found excuses. And has that taught you anything? It taught me that Olivia isn't as perfect as I thought. It taught me that it's easy to be generous with other people's money. And about me? Emma hesitated. It taught me that you weren't the failure in this story. It taught me that you held everything in your hands. And I didn't even realize it. And now I realize it, and I'm sorry it took me so long to realize it. We spent the rest of the afternoon talking. Emma told me about her job, her studies, how she was learning to manage money. I told her about my promotion, about Steve, about my dance classes. You seem happy, she observed when she was getting ready to leave. I am happy, I replied. For the first time in a long time. Do you think we can try to have a normal relationship as adults? We can try, I agreed. But it will be different, Emma. I won't be your financial safety net anymore. I won't put my life aside for your needs anymore. I won't accept disrespect anymore. I understand, she said. And I accept. We'll see, I replied. A year has passed since that day at the Mexican restaurant. I'm sitting on the balcony of my new apartment. Yes, I moved to a bigger and nicer place. Drinking my morning coffee while I write this story. Emma graduated last month. She got a job at a marketing company in Chicago, earning a decent salary for a recent graduate. She still owes the $50,000 in student loans, but she has a plan to pay them off in 10 years. She's living with 2 coworkers in a small but tidy apartment. Our relationship has completely changed. We talk once a week, always on Sunday afternoon. She tells me about work. I tell her about my life. There's no more drama, no more requests for money, no more comparisons with Olivia. There's mutual respect. Last month, she sent me a Mother's Day card. Inside, there was a 3-page letter thanking me for everything I did for her over the years. She wrote, "Mom, I know I was terrible to you for a long time. I know I didn't value your sacrifices. I know I hurt you deeply, but I want you to know that today at 21, I finally understand what you did for me. You gave me everything: education, opportunities, unconditional love. And when I disrespected you, you still gave me the most important lesson of my life, that I am strong enough to take care of myself. Thank you for not giving up on me, even when I gave up on you." I cried when I read it, not from sadness but from relief. My daughter had finally grown up. Steve and I are engaged. He proposed last month during a trip to Napa Valley. A trip I would never have taken when all my energy and money were dedicated to Emma. We're getting married in the fall in a small and elegant ceremony. Emma was genuinely happy when I told her about the engagement. "Mom, you deserve to be happy," she said. "You deserve someone who values you." There was no jealousy, no drama, just adult support. Matthew and Olivia had their second child, a boy they named Ryan. I heard they're having financial difficulties. Olivia had to go back to work part-time at a department store. The reality of life with 2 children, a high mortgage, and excessive spending finally caught up with them. Emma told me that Matthew called her a few weeks ago, asking if she could lend money to help with the baby's expenses. She said, "No, Dad, I earn an entry-level salary and have student loans to pay," she explained. "I can't help financially." He was upset, but she maintained her position. My daughter had finally learned to set boundaries. As for me, I'm a completely different person. I was promoted again at work. Now I'm the accounting director. I earn more money than I ever imagined possible. I travel for work regularly, something I always wanted to do but never could because I needed to be available for Emma. I have an active social circle. I go out with friends regularly, participate in a book club, still take dance classes. Steve and I travel together, go to concerts, dine at sophisticated restaurants. I have a full and rich life. I bought a new car, a hybrid SUV that I always wanted but could never justify the expense. I completely renovated my wardrobe. I do spa treatments occasionally. I spend money on myself without guilt because I learned that taking care of myself isn't selfishness. It's necessity. Sometimes people ask me if I regret the drastic decision I made. The answer is no, not for a second. That decision saved my life and, ironically, saved my relationship with my daughter. If I had continued facilitating Emma's behavior, she would never have learned independence. She would never have developed self-respect or respect for me. She would never have become the strong and capable woman she is today. And I would never have discovered who Rachel really is when not entirely defined by the role of mother. Today, as I write these words, I can say with certainty, I wasn't the failure in this story. I was the woman who made impossible sacrifices for 20 years, and when disrespected, had enough courage to say no more. I was the woman who chose her own dignity above others' convenience. I was the woman who realized that loving someone means letting them face the consequences of their own actions. I was the woman who decided that she deserved to be treated with respect. And today, at 43, I am the woman who is finally living the life she deserves. My name is Rachel. I am an accountant, fiancée, friend, dancer, traveler, and yes, mother. But today, being a mother is just a part of who I am, not the entirety of my identity. And that, I discovered, makes me not just a happier woman, but a better mother. Sometimes the greatest lesson you can teach someone is that you won't always be there to solve their problems. Sometimes the greatest love you can show is refusing to facilitate someone's weakness. I'm not a failure. I never was. I just took 42 years to realize it. And now that I realize it, no one will ever make me forget. Now on to the next story. Story 2. I lost my sight, but this morning, miraculously, I could see again. I wanted to tell my parents the good news, but I found a crumpled up tissue under my bed. There was a message on the tissue. Don't tell them you can see. 3 months ago, I lost my sight because of a car accident. My parents moved us away from the city in order to take better care of me. But this morning, I miraculously regained my sight. I was just about to tell my parents the good news when I suddenly noticed a crumpled up tissue under my bed. I had an extremely strong demand for cleanliness, so I picked it up, but there seemed to be something written on the tissue. As I smoothed it out, I frowned. Don't tell them you can see. The handwriting was messy, as if someone had written it in a great hurry. There was no one else here. Them obviously meant my parents. But then, I had no idea who could be the one leaving this message. During these 3 months, the only people who came to my room were my parents and my husband, Noah. Just then, there was a knock on the door. Ella, I made you some soup. My mom's kind voice sounded from behind the door. I casually threw the tissue into a dustbin. But when I opened the door, my pupil shrank. A woman was standing at the door with a bowl, looking at me, smiling. Her lips were bright red and the smile on her face looked eerie. She was not my mom. I jerked back a step and looked at her with a shocked face. My mom was a kindly-looking woman, but this woman looked very shrewd and her features did not bear the slightest resemblance to my mom. But the strangest thing was that her voice was exactly the same as my mom's. I was just about to question who she was when I suddenly remembered the message on the tissue. Don't tell them you can see. Ella, what's wrong? Not feeling well. The woman took a worried step closer to me. Just leave the soup here, Mom. I'll eat it later. I fumbled to sit back on the bed and said slowly, You should have it while it's hot, Ella. Why don't you let me feed it to you? The woman said. I immediately refused. But I'm still a little sleepy, Mom. I want to take a nap. I'll eat it later. The woman didn't insist, as she left the bowl on the nightstand and went out. The moment she closed the door, I let out a sigh of relief. My back was completely drenched with cold sweat. Where had my mom gone? And who is this woman? I was really worried about my mom, so I opened the door and walked out. It was the first time I saw where I had been living for the past few months. The spacious 2-story villa. I stood on the second floor and saw a man sitting on the sofa in the living room with his back to me, reading a newspaper. This must be my dad. I looked around to make sure the woman was not in the room, and then lowered my voice as I called out, Dad! The man turned his head, and I saw his face. Fear swept through my entire body. For what I saw was not my dad, but another face that was completely unfamiliar to me. Ella, what's wrong? Yet from the man's mouth came the voice of my dad. I squeezed out a smile. Nothing, Dad. The woman walked out from another room. Her bright red lips pulled into an extravagant smile. Ella, weren't you going to take a nap? Oh, changed my mind. Maybe I don't need a nap that much, Mom. I smiled. Then let me help you eat the soup. The woman brought out the soup from my room and fed it to me with a spoon. I was very anxious, afraid that the woman would notice that I could see. But fortunately, she did not seem to notice anything. I could hardly taste the soup because I didn't know what the woman could have put into it. What's wrong, Ella? You're sweating so much and look worried. She noticed something after all. She approached closer with concern. Her eyes were staring straight into mine. Those eyes were very large, but the white took up most of them. Oh, I just don't know when my eyes will actually recover, I said, pretending to be frustrated. The woman smiled. Don't worry, Ella. You'll be fine. I squeezed out another smile as the woman stroked my head lovingly. When I returned to my room, I immediately locked the door and sat down on the bed. My chest was full of fear. Half a month ago, my husband, Noah, had come to visit me once. My husband was a plane captain and had a very busy schedule. At that time, he had a good talk with my parents and even got drunk, so he spent the night in the villa. That meant that half a month ago, my parents were still my real parents. I found my phone, which had been set in voice mode since I lost my sight. called Noah. He answered immediately. Noah's voice was as gentle as ever. Yes, Ella? I just got off the plane. I can come and see you now. Noah, this might sound crazy to you, but believe me, all I'm going to tell you now is true, I said in an urgent tone. Noah was silent for a moment before he said, I will believe whatever you say, Ella, no matter what it is. I told Noah everything. I'm coming over right now, Ella. The airport was about an hour's drive away. Noah coming over eased a lot of my anxiety. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. Ella, it's time to take your meds. My dad's voice sounded outside, but I knew it wasn't my dad. It was that strange man. My heartbeat fastened, and I stared at the door as I didn't answer him. The man began to turn the doorknob. Why did you lock the door, Ella? Your eyes won't heal if you don't take your meds. The man urged me to open the door, but I was determined not to open it. Not until Noah came over. Asleep, okay? The man chuckled. I heard his footsteps going down the stairs. I breathed a sigh of relief, but something felt strange. I had a strong feeling of being watched. I walked nervously to the door and listened for movement outside. It was completely silent. Sounded like the man was gone, but I still felt uneasy, so I carefully got down to the floor, wanting to have a peek outside from under the door. A pair of eyes with a lot of whites. Outside, the man also got down to the floor. His eyes were staring straight at me. I was instantly covered with cold sweat. I pretended not to see him and slowly groped on the floor. Strange. I think I just dropped my phone around here. Those eyes disappeared from the slit. I collapsed on the floor, gasping for air. It was so freaking creepy. What did this creepy couple want from me? Where had my parents gone? And now, the only thing I could do was wait for Noah to arrive. After an hour of torturous waiting, Noah finally called. He sounded very anxious. Ella, where the hell are you now? What? I'm at the villa. You've been here before. Have you got to the wrong place? I also got more anxious. I am at the villa, but I don't see you or your parents. So dusty here, like no one has lived here for a long time. Noah sounded puzzled. I was appalled. Noah sent me a photo. Indeed, it was the villa, but Noah was right. It seemed to be unoccupied for a long time. The sofa was covered with a thick layer of dust, and the room corners even had cobwebs. Clearly, that was not the villa I was in right now, but the layout was exactly the same as this villa. A chill ran down my spine as I looked again at the photos Noah had sent. Something was terribly wrong. It was like I was trapped in a nightmare, and the more I tried to wake up, the deeper I seemed to fall. I knew I needed to get out of here before it was too late. With my phone still in my hand, I sent a message to Noah describing exactly where I was and asking him to try to find an alternative way into this other villa. I had to do it silently. I knew those imposters could hear anything I said. I'll try, he replied quickly. Don't leave your room until I get there. I was beginning to sweat with anxiety, my heart pounding. I heard the man's footsteps descending the stairs, but that didn't mean he had given up. I moved away from the door, trying to think of what to do while waiting for Noah. Time seemed to drag, and the silence of the house was unnerving. I didn't know where those two were or what they might do if they discovered I could see again. Suddenly, I heard footsteps climbing the stairs again. The sound made my stomach drop. The door to the bedroom was locked, but that didn't make me feel any safer. The knocks echoed from the other side. Ella, I brought more soup. It was the voice of that woman, the one pretending to be my mother. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. I'm not hungry, Mom, I replied, trying to disguise the fear in my voice. But you need to eat. Open the door, dear. I felt tears beginning to well up in my eyes. What did they want from me? They were clearly trying to control me, and I had no idea why. All I knew was that I needed to buy time until Noah arrived. I'm tired. I'm just going to sleep a little longer, I said, forcing a yawn. Silence. After a moment, I heard footsteps retreating again. I let out a breath I hadn't even realized I was holding and sat down on the bed, my head pounding. That was when I noticed something strange. The glass of water on the nightstand. I was sure it hadn't been there before. My mind started connecting the dots. and the fear inside me grew. They were trying to drug me. A shiver ran through my body and all I wanted to do was run. But I knew I had to be smart. I waited a few minutes, trying to calm myself. I needed to be ready for when Noah arrived. I grabbed a piece of paper and quickly wrote a note. They are not my parents. Do not trust them. I hid the paper under the pillow, hoping Noah would find it if something went wrong. Then I heard a noise coming from downstairs. A door slamming, and then quick footsteps. Someone was coming. I stood up from the bed, my heart racing. When the doorknob started to move, I backed away instinctively. It was locked, but I knew it wouldn't last long if they wanted to get in. Ella dear, open the door please. The woman's voice came, now without any sweetness, as a cold command. We don't want to hurt you. My body froze. The doorknob kept turning, and I knew they might try to break the door down. Desperation washed over me, and then I remembered the window. It was my only way out. I went to it quickly and looked down. It was high, but maybe I could make it down using the balcony railing. Without thinking twice, I opened the window carefully and began climbing down, gripping the railing and trying not to look down. The cold night wind gave me chills, but I couldn't stop. As soon as I reached the ground, I started running, not looking back. My legs were trembling, but I needed to find Noah. I ran through the villa's yard until I reached the gate. It was locked, of course, but there was an opening in the fence. A small hope. I squeezed through it, scratching my arms, but I managed to get through. As soon as I got to the road, I saw headlights approaching. It was Noah. I ran towards the car, waving frantically. He stopped abruptly and got out, running towards me. Ella! He hugged me tightly and I allowed myself to cry, relieved to finally be with someone I could trust. They aren't my parents, Noah, I screamed, sobbing. They're imposters trying to keep me trapped there. Let's get out of here now. He pulled me to the car and I quickly got in. Noah went around and got in the driver's seat, immediately speeding away. I looked back through the window. The villa was there, but something seemed different. The lights were off and for a moment it looked even more abandoned, like the photo Noah had shown me. I felt dizzy, like I was losing my grasp on reality. You're safe now, Ella. I promise. Noah's voice was firm, but I noticed something in his tone that unsettled me. Where are we going? I asked, trying to keep my fear under control. To a safe place where no one can hurt you. Suddenly, something felt wrong. I looked at Noah's face, trying to find the comfort he always gave me, but his eyes were fixed on the road, and there was something in them that made me uneasy. I remembered the note I left under the pillow. What if Noah wasn't who I thought he was either? Noah, I began, hesitant. You believe me, don't you? About everything. I said. He looked at me for a second with a strange smile on his lips. Of course, Ella. I always believe you. My heart sank, and I realized the nightmare was far from over. Noah kept driving, and although I was relieved to be far away from that strange house, something still felt wrong inside me. I looked at him, trying to find comfort, but there was something strange in his eyes, something I couldn't quite understand. My memories were hazy, and a feeling of unreality was washing over me. Suddenly, I began to feel incredibly weak, as if all the strength was leaving my body. The view in front of me began to distort, and Noah's voice became as if he was speaking from the end of a long tunnel. I wanted to scream, wanted to ask what was happening, but I couldn't form the words. Everything around me started to fade into a blur, and I was engulfed in a deep, comforting darkness. Suddenly, a bright light appeared, and I found myself in a completely different place. There was no car, no road, no Noah. I was in a vast field covered in a soft mist. In the distance, I saw familiar figures, and my heart pounded with emotion and fear. It was my mother, or what looked like my mother, and beside her, my father. They were smiling at me, but the smiles weren't warm. They were cold, expressionless. Ella dear, my mother called, extending her hand to me. It's time for you to come with us. I took a step back, something inside me telling me that this wasn't right. They weren't my parents. I felt it deep in my soul. No, I can't go with you, I replied, my voice sounding weak and distant. My mother's smile disappeared, replaced by an expression of impatience. That was when I heard another voice, a voice I would recognize anywhere. "Ella, don't go." I turned and saw Noah, or someone who looked like Noah, but there was something different about him now. He was surrounded by a bright light, and his eyes no longer held the discomfort I had noticed before. They were kind and protective, filled with a goodness that seemed infinite. "You can't go with them, Ella," he said, approaching me and extending his hand. "It's not your time." Who are they?" I asked, looking at the figures who now seemed even more distant and threatening. "They aren't your parents," Noah replied, his voice firm and reassuring. "They are beings who came to take you, but you don't belong to them yet. You have so much to do, so many people who need you." I looked at him, trying to understand. Suddenly, everything started to make sense. The strange house, the imposters, the constant feeling of danger. I was caught between life and death, and these beings wanted to take me away. Noah was my protector, my guardian. He was there to ensure I wouldn't give up. But how? I began to ask, but Noah just smiled and wrapped me in a gentle embrace. "Trust me, Ella. It's time for you to wake up." And with those words, the light around us intensified until everything vanished in a blinding flash. When I opened my eyes again, I felt a heaviness in my lungs, as if I was breathing for the first time in years. I blinked a few times, adjusting my vision to the light in the room, and realized I was lying in a hospital bed. Around me, machines beeped softly, and I heard low voices and whispers. I turned my head slowly and saw familiar faces. My father, my mother, and Noah. They were there, but now they seemed so different from how I had seen them in that strange place. My mother had tears in her eyes, and my father held her hand tightly, as if he couldn't believe what he was seeing. "Ella?" my mother whispered, and then her tears flowed freely. "She woke up. It's a miracle," I heard my father say, his voice choked with emotion. Noah was beside them, but not as I had seen him before. Now he was my husband, the man I loved and trusted. His eyes were filled with tears, and when our eyes met, he smiled. A smile so full of love that it nearly broke my heart. That was when I understood. All that time I had been in a coma. The car accident had left me in a state between life and death, and what I experienced was a near-death experience. The beings who looked like my parents were forces that wanted to take me, but Noah, or a representation of something greater, saved me. He was my guardian angel, the one who had fought for me to have another chance at life. Through her tears, my mother explained that the doctors had already lost hope. They had authorized the disconnection of the machines that were keeping me alive, but somehow, at that exact moment, I came back. They said it was a miracle, and I knew deep down in my heart that it truly was. After that, nothing was the same. I began to believe that there was something greater, something divine, watching over me. I started seeking answers in faith and spirituality because I knew that experience had been more than just a dream. It was a sign, a gift, the chance to start over. Today, I am grateful every day for being alive. Waking up from the coma and seeing my family by my side, especially Noah, felt like being reborn, and I will never forget the light, the gentle whispers of Noah telling me that it wasn't my time yet. After waking up from that coma, my life changed completely. I became a different person, someone who had a new appreciation for life and what it means to be alive. That experience wasn't just a strange dream or a delirium caused by the coma. It was something much deeper, something spiritual that connected me to something beyond human understanding. It didn't take me long to realize that I needed to share what I had experienced. Today, I dedicate a large part of my time to giving talks in churches and community centers. I share my story with those who need a reason to believe, to find hope. I stand at the pulpit and see attentive faces, some skeptical, others already with tears in their eyes before I even begin to speak, and I always start the same way. I went to a place where light and darkness coexisted. I stood between life and death, and somehow, someone was there to bring me back. I talk about the beings I encountered who looked like my parents but were not. I talk about the fear I felt, the confusion, and about the one who saved me, Noah, or at least a part of him, a representation of a guardian angel. Whenever I reach that part, I feel a tightness in my chest. I can't explain exactly who or what Noah was in that moment, but what I know is that without him, I wouldn't be here today. My family still gets emotional every time I tell this story. I remember the first time I shared everything with them after waking up. My mother cried so much she could barely speak, while my father stood beside her, his eyes filled with tears. They told me that to them, it was practically impossible to believe I had survived that accident when I was taken to the hospital. The doctors had no hope, the injuries were too severe, and to make matters worse, right after the surgery, I fell into a deep coma. It was at that moment that I lost my vision. Not physically, but because I was trapped in a limbo state, a battle for my soul. The loss of sight, the dark and confusing environment I experienced in that dream was a representation of the vulnerable state I was in, caught between the world of the living and the dead. When I talk about the beings trying to take me away, my mother always cries. She tells me that during the time I was in a coma, there were moments when it seemed like I was slipping away, as if my body was giving up, and it was during those moments that Noah, my real husband, was more present than ever, holding my hand, praying beside me, talking to me even though I couldn't respond. Today, he is still my protector, and now I see him not just as the man I love but as someone who, in some way, channeled that divine force that brought me back. It doesn't matter what you call it, guardian angel, miracle, faith. I know I was saved by something greater than all of us, and I am grateful every single day. When I wake up in the morning, I take a deep breath and feel the joy of being alive. I see the colors of the sunrise, hear the birds singing, and feel a gratitude that I had never experienced before. Life is precious, and now I see every small moment as a gift. At my last talk, a young woman approached me afterward. She had tears in her eyes and told me she had lost hope in life, that she felt there was no reason to go on. After hearing my story, she found a new meaning. She said that if I could come back from something so devastating, then maybe she could find the strength to move forward too. When I hugged her, I felt that I was doing the right thing. My experience was not in vain. I was here to help others see the light, even when everything seemed shrouded in shadows. And whoever that guardian angel was, whether it was Noah, his essence, or something that took his form to save me, I am eternally grateful. I know it wasn't my time, and now I live each day as an opportunity to honor the gift I received. My family fully supports me on this journey. They are part of my new life, a life full of purpose. And every time I remember their scared faces at the hospital when they thought they would lose me, and the indescribable joy I felt waking up and seeing them all by my side, I know I am here for a reason. Today, we are closer than ever, and every hug, every smile, carries a greater weight, a certainty that miracles are real and that faith can move mountains. Yes, the doctors said it was a miracle, and I believe it. Now on to the next story. Story 3. The day I got a job offer, Cindy, my cousin's wife, announced she was pregnant. She gave me 2 options: move out or pay $10,000 a month for living expenses. But what she didn't know is that the house we're living in now is mine, and the money we use also comes from me. The day I received my offer letter, Uncle Mark made a huge feast. Even Jason, my cousin who was usually too busy with work, rushed home before dinner. After a few rounds of drinks, Cindy, who had been quietly eating, suddenly spoke. "I'm pregnant." The room went silent for a few seconds before it burst into laughter and excitement. Jason's face turned red with joy as he stared at Cindy's belly. "Really, Cindy? Why didn't you tell me?" Cindy smiled shyly. "I wanted to surprise you." No one was happier than Uncle Mark and Aunt Linda. Jason and Cindy had been married for 3 years without having any children. I was genuinely happy for Cindy and thought to myself, I'll definitely give my future niece or nephew a big gift. As the joyful atmosphere grew, Cindy suddenly put down her chopsticks. "There's one more thing I want to mention," she said. Aunt Linda, her eyes still full of joy, asked, "What is it?" "I think Sierra should move out," Cindy said with a cold expression. "She's already found a job, and now that I'm pregnant, it's going to be inconvenient after the baby is born." The room instantly became silent, and Uncle Mark and Aunt Linda's faces grew awkward. Cindy, though usually quiet, had never spoken to me with such a cold tone. I had always thought she was nice, so I responded kindly, "There shouldn't be any inconvenience, and when the baby arrives, I can even help take care of it. When the baby comes, there won't be enough room for everyone." "How could that be?" I said, trying to be considerate. "We can clean up the attic floor and make room for your little family. There will be more than enough space." Cindy shot me an inexplicable glare. Aunt Linda chimed in to reassure her. "Cindy, don't worry. We'll make sure neither you nor the baby is uncomfortable." Cindy wasn't finished. "When I have the baby, I'll be recovering and won't be able to move around or dress properly. It's just not right to have an outsider in the house." Suddenly, her expression softened again. "Sierra, I'm not trying to force you out, but you've been living here for so many years. Isn't it time you moved on?" Seeing my face darken, Cindy added, "Your parents passed away early when you were in college and grad school. My in-laws covered all your living expenses. Nowadays, young women are all about independence. It's time you learned some self-respect and started living on your own." Uncle Mark, who had been silent for a long time, finally slammed his hand on the table, yelling at Cindy, "That's enough. You're getting out of line. Jason, take your wife back to your room." Jason quickly stepped in to defend her. "Dad, Cindy's pregnant. Why are you yelling at her? Besides, she's not wrong." Uncle Mark lost it. He slammed his glass down and shouted at Jason, "Then you can get out too." Cindy wasn't wrong. 7 years ago, my parents were in a car accident and both became comatose. That year, I was about to take my college entrance exams, juggling between school and the hospital, and I started thinking about hiring a nurse. When Uncle Mark found out, he came to me and said, "Sierra, you don't need to hire a nurse. Aunt Linda and I can take care of them." Uncle Mark had always been kind to me, but taking care of one person in a coma was already hard, let alone two. "It's no trouble," he said, tears welling in his eyes. "They're my sister and brother-in-law after all. No one will care for them better than family." After thinking it over, I agreed and paid Uncle Mark and Aunt Linda triple the normal rate to take care of my parents. They did a great job. Every time I visited, there was no smell or mess on them. They looked after my parents for over a year before both passed away. The tension in the room was palpable, and everyone had their eyes on me. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. After living in that house for so many years and helping the family, hearing Cindy, who barely knew the whole story, treat me like an outsider in my own home was too much. My chest tightened, and with each word she spat, I held back from exploding, but I had reached my limit. Cindy, still with a harsh expression, continued with more venom in her voice, "I'm just saying what's obvious, Sierra. You've been living here for way too long. It's time you learn to live on your own. I know you may be comfortable here, but—" She hesitated for a second, giving Jason a superior glance. "The truth is this house isn't yours, and since I'm the one having a baby, we should be the priority." Jason, who had been standing by her side, tried to soften the blow but failed miserably. "Sierra, you know this isn't personal, but Cindy's pregnant and, well, things are changing." I stared at the two of them, my gaze fixed, feeling my patience completely vanish. It was time to lay everything out in the open, not out of pride but out of necessity. I had stayed quiet for too long, and that had only allowed people to think they could walk all over me. With a voice steadier than I expected, I began, "Cindy, Jason, I'm sorry, but you're both mistaken about a few things here." The room fell even more silent. Uncle Mark, who was still red with anger, watched me intently. Aunt Linda, clearly uncomfortable with the whole situation, sat with her hands folded, unsure of what to say. All eyes were on me. I took another deep breath and continued, "The truth is, whether you know it or not, this house is mine." Cindy, with an expression of disdain, raised an eyebrow. "Yes, you heard me right, Cindy. I bought this house with the money I received after my parents passed. I paid Uncle Mark and Aunt Linda to take care of them while they were in comas, and after they passed away, all the money, including the money used for the upkeep of this house, came from me. The shock in the room was immediate. Jason looked confused, as if he had been hit with an unexpected blow, while Cindy's face transformed from smug superiority to a mix of rage and humiliation. She went pale for a moment, her lips trembling, but quickly shifted her expression to something even colder, her eyes burning with pure hatred. "What?" Jason stammered, clearly at a loss. "But Dad, this can't be true, right?" Uncle Mark looked at him, his eyes filled with frustration and shame. He hesitated before nodding slowly in confirmation. Cindy, still in shock, tried to gather herself, but it was clear she was furious. She opened her mouth a few times as if trying to come up with a retort, but no words came. I had completely disarmed her. Finally, she muttered, almost under her breath, "So you're saying this house is yours?" I nodded calmly. "Yes, the house is mine, and the money we've been using to cover expenses here also comes from me." That uncomfortable silence returned, gripping the room. Cindy stared at me with a mix of resentment and contempt. Jason looked completely lost, unsure of where to look or what to say. The night, which had started with celebration, now ended with unbearable tension. Cindy, visibly trying to hold on to what remained of her dignity, stood up from the table without another word, turned, and marched upstairs, her face twisted with anger. Jason followed after her, still in a daze. I knew this wasn't the end of it. The next morning, I woke up early, still exhausted from the argument the night before. I was determined to move forward and focus on my work. I got dressed, had a quick coffee, and left the house without saying a word to anyone. The tension from last night still hung in the air, and I figured it was better to let things cool off before any more discussions took place. I spent the entire day at the office, but something nagged at the back of my mind. I knew Cindy wasn't the type to let things go easily. When I finally returned home that afternoon, tired from the day, the first thing I noticed was the eerie silence around the house. It was unusual. Normally there would be some sort of movement, especially now with Cindy pregnant, but there wasn't a sound. When I tried to open the front door, it didn't budge. My heart skipped a beat. I tried again, but nothing. I walked around the house to try the back door, but it was locked too. That's when I realized something was very wrong. Suddenly, Cindy appeared at the upstairs window, her face twisted into an expression of pure fury. "You're not taking this house from me?" she screamed before disappearing back inside. My heart sank. I knew exactly what she had done. She had changed the locks while I was gone. It was clear Cindy had decided to fight for what she believed was hers. Even if her claim was built on a lie, she wasn't going to accept that the house was mine. With a bitter smile, I looked up at the house, feeling adrenaline pulse through my veins. Cindy could try to kick me out all she wanted, but she had no idea who she was dealing with. I knew exactly what to do. I pulled out my phone and made a quick call to my lawyer. "Hi, it's Sierra. I need you to get the paperwork ready. Looks like we're going to have to settle this the hard way." The silence on the other end of the line was unsettling. My lawyer still hadn't responded to the voice message I sent, and I was growing more frustrated by the minute. This situation had spiraled out of control, and I knew I couldn't wait any longer. Cindy was trying to force me out of my own home, and I wasn't about to let that happen. Taking a deep breath, I decided it was time to escalate. I picked up my phone again, but this time I dialed the police. Calmly, I explained the situation. How Cindy had changed the locks on my house without permission and refused to let me in. "Do you have proof of ownership, ma'am?" the officer on the other end asked. "Yes, I have all the documents. The house is in my name," I replied, already pulling up the scanned copy of the deed from my email, ready to show it to them when they arrived. About 30 minutes later, a police car pulled up to the house. 2 officers, both middle-aged men, stepped out and approached me. "Good afternoon, ma'am. We received your call. Can you explain what's going on here?" I laid out the situation, from the argument the night before to Cindy changing the locks without my consent. They listened intently, and one officer asked to see the proof of ownership. I handed him the documents, and he made a few notes before turning to his partner. "Let's talk to her," the other officer said. They walked up to the front door and knocked. A few seconds later, Cindy appeared, her face still flushed with anger. Her expression changed when she saw the police, going from surprise to irritation. She knew things were getting serious. "What's going on?" she asked, feigning innocence. One of the officers calmly explained the situation, making it clear that the house was legally mine and that she had no right to change the locks or prevent me from entering. Cindy, as defiant as ever, tried to argue. "This is ridiculous. I'm pregnant. I have a baby on the way, and she's trying to throw me out. I'm not leaving. This house will be ours soon anyway." The officer shook his head, unfazed. "Ma'am, we're not here to argue about the future. What matters is the legal ownership right now. This house isn't yours, and you changed the locks without permission. That's considered trespassing." Cindy's composure cracked. "I'm not leaving," she shouted, her voice shaking with rage. "This house should be mine, and you can't force me out." The other officer, who had been quiet until now, spoke up firmly. "You have two options, ma'am. Either you leave the house now or you'll be arrested for trespassing. It's your choice." Cindy's face went pale. She looked at me, her eyes burning with hatred, but she knew she had lost. Her defiance crumbled, and after a few tense moments, she let out a furious scream. "You'll regret this," she yelled, her voice full of venom. "I'm leaving, but this isn't over." She stormed upstairs, and I could hear her angrily packing her things. Jason, still at work, wasn't there to witness the scene, but I knew he'd be livid when he found out. Still, I didn't care. Cindy had crossed the line. A few minutes later, she came stomping down the stairs, a suitcase in hand, her face twisted in rage. She stormed past the officers without looking at me, but before she left, she turned and shot me one final look of pure malice. Without another word, she walked out the door. I stood my ground, refusing to let her words get to me. I knew I had done the right thing. After the police left, I stood in the living room, finally feeling the weight lift off my shoulders. Cindy was gone, and she wouldn't be coming back. In the weeks that followed, Jason tried to reach out multiple times, but my decision was made. Cindy was never setting foot in my house again. Even when their baby was born, I held firm. Cindy had shown her true colors, and there was no way I was going to let her back into my life or my home. Eventually, Jason and Cindy gave up. They found another place to live, and I moved on with my life in peace. From that day forward, my home was truly mine again, and I never let Cindy cross that threshold ever again. Do you think I did the right thing? Now on to the next story. Story 4. My name's Noah. I'm 21, and up until Thanksgiving dinner last year, I thought I just got the short end of the stick in life. You know the type: student loans piling up like a game of Jenga, part-time job at the campus coffee shop, duct tape sneakers, microwave noodles 5 days a week. I wasn't bitter. Not really. I figured life was just tough and my parents did what they could. I never expected anything handed to me. But that night rewrote everything I thought I knew about my family. And it started with one sentence from my grandpa. Thanksgiving has always been a bit of a circus in our family. My mom's side is loud, dramatic, and allergic to minding their own business. But this year it was my dad's side hosting, which usually meant things stayed calmer, more polite. Grandpa always carved the turkey like it was a ritual, and Grandma passed around her famous cornbread while pretending not to notice my cousin's sneaking extra helpings. It was normal. I was home from college for the weekend, already dreading the midterms waiting for me when I got back. I remember sitting next to my little cousin Mason, who was too distracted by his mashed potatoes to talk much. My parents were across the table chatting with my uncle and aunt like everything was fine, like they hadn't ignored most of my texts that semester. We were halfway through dinner when Grandpa raised his glass in a toast, something he only did when he was in a particularly sentimental mood. "To family," he said, voice shaky but warm, "and to seeing our kids grow into something we can be proud of." People murmured their agreements, clinked glasses. Then he looked right at me and said it. "And Noah, glad to see you're putting the college fund to good use." Everything around me paused. Forks froze midair. My heart thudded once, then again faster. I blinked. What fund? That's when I saw it. My dad choked on his drink, spluttering into his napkin. My mom's face drained of color so fast it was like someone pulled the plug. My aunt's eyes darted toward them, and even Mason stopped chewing. Grandpa frowned. The college fund we set up when you were born. You didn't know? And then, like a nail driven into the silence, Mason, sweet, oblivious little Mason, looked up at me and whispered, "Wait, you didn't know?" I didn't say anything. Couldn't. Felt like someone had punched me in the gut. I turned slowly to my parents, but neither of them met my eyes. My mom picked at her peas like they were suddenly fascinating. My dad reached for his wine glass again. "Noah," Grandpa said, clearly confused. "Hasn't the fund been helping with your tuition? We've been putting money in it for years. Every birthday, every Christmas, even when things got tight." I swallowed hard. "No one ever told me about a fund," I said, quieter than I expected. At that, Grandma's lips parted like she wanted to speak, but didn't know where to start. Aunt Julie leaned in slightly, eyebrows raised, her fork resting on her plate. "Wait, so who's been managing it?" That was when things started to unravel. My dad cleared his throat. We didn't think he needed to know," he said, eyes still on his plate. "You didn't think I needed to know I had a college fund?" My voice cracked on the word had. "We used it," my mom said quickly, her voice tight, "for the house and bills and emergencies. We thought it was best." Grandpa's face turned from confusion to something else. Something cold. "What do you mean you used it?" My dad shot him a look, then turned to me. "Noah, we were struggling. The recession hit hard. The roof was leaking. And your brother needed braces." "My brother," I snapped, cutting him off. "The one who didn't even go to college?" "It was all for the family," my mom said, her voice rising. "You wouldn't understand. You were just a kid. You wouldn't remember how bad it got." I stood up. My chair screeched against the floor. Every eye at the table was on me. "You could have told me. You let me take out loans. You let me work 20 hours a week on top of classes. I thought we just didn't have the money. I thought I was doing the right thing, working hard, not asking for help. And the whole time you were sitting on my college fund." "It wasn't like that," my dad said, but he didn't sound convinced. "You're making this a scene." I laughed, bitter, sharp. "Oh, I'm making a scene. You lied to me for years and I'm the problem." Grandpa turned to them, his voice quiet but firm. "That money was never meant for you, too. It was Noah's. We made that clear." "Well, maybe if you hadn't insisted on putting it in our names." My mom began, but she stopped when she saw the look on Grandpa's face. "Because we trusted you," he said. "Because we thought you'd do right by your son." The table was dead silent. My cousins looked anywhere but at me. Even Mason kept his head down now. My aunt looked uncomfortable, and my uncle. He slowly leaned back in his chair, lips pressed tight. I sat back down, not because I wanted to stay, but because my legs were shaking. "How much was in it?" I asked, looking at Grandpa. He hesitated. "About 40,000 by the time you turned 18. Probably more." "We kept adding to it," Grandma whispered. 40,000. 40,000. That could have wiped out every loan I had. Covered books, housing, maybe even let me breathe for once. I stared at my parents. My mom looked like she might cry, but I didn't care. My dad looked angry, but not ashamed. Just cornered. "We did what we had to do," he muttered. "No," I said, my voice low. "You did what was convenient for you." Grandma finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "We need to talk about this, all of us." But I wasn't listening anymore. I was already pulling out my phone, my fingers moving almost on instinct, not to make a scene, not to post some angry rant, just to pull up something I'd been sitting on for a while, something I'd kept buried, figuring it wasn't worth sharing until now. And as I opened the document I'd been holding on to for months, the one with every cent I'd scraped together, every scholarship I'd fought for, and a little bonus I'd gotten from the startup I'd interned at over the summer, I saw my dad glance at the screen and freeze. He knew what it was, or at least what it meant, but I wasn't ready to say it out loud. Not yet. Because the truth, that was just the beginning. I didn't sleep that night. After the dinner ended in a messy, silent exodus with Grandma quietly ushering everyone toward dessert like sugar might patch the cracks in our family, I packed my things and drove back to my college apartment early. I left a note for Grandpa thanking him for dinner and for telling me the truth, even if he didn't mean to. The silence in my car on the drive back was louder than anything said at the table. I kept thinking about Mason's face when he whispered, "You didn't know." The innocence of it. The sheer weight that sentence carried without even trying. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about trust, about my entire childhood being edited, revised, and narrated by two people who saw me as a resource, not a son. That document I'd pulled up, it was a breakdown of everything I'd earned and saved since I turned 18. Scholarships, stipends, job wages, freelance gigs, anything I could hustle. I had been so proud of it, too. I remember sitting in my tiny apartment at 2 a.m. once, calculating whether I could afford a new pair of shoes or if that money was better spent on groceries. I chose ramen and used duct tape on the sneakers. My parents apparently chose braces for my brother and that bonus from the startup. What they didn't know was that I wasn't just an intern anymore. 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, the company offered me a full-time position after graduation. High salary, signing bonus, stock options. They told me they were grooming me for leadership within 2 years if I kept up my pace. I'd been waiting to tell my parents when I got home, waiting for a moment when I thought they'd be proud. Now I wasn't sure I wanted them to know at all. The next few days were quiet, too quiet. I didn't hear from my parents. Not a call, not a text. Grandma messaged me once, just a simple, "Thinking of you. Love you." I stared at it for a while before typing thanks. "I'm okay." And then deleting it. I didn't respond. I didn't know how. But then the messages started coming. First from my mom, "Noah, we should talk. Can we please meet before you go back?" Then my dad, "You're being immature. This is more complicated than you think. Call me." Then, oddly, from my uncle, "Hey, just want you to know I had no idea about the fun stuff. That's messed up. I'm here if you want to talk." I didn't reply to any of them. Not yet. Instead, I did something that made my hands shake. I contacted the bank listed on the trust fund documentation Grandpa had mentioned. It took a bit of digging. A few forwarded emails from Grandma once she realized how serious I was, and a polite but firm phone call with a confused advisor who couldn't understand how the beneficiary of a fund didn't know it existed. When they confirmed that the fund had been drained over the course of 7 years and that every withdrawal had been authorized by my parents, I felt sick. There it was, paper trail, hard numbers, names. They didn't even try to hide it. I asked if there was anything I could do. The advisor paused before saying, "You'll want to speak to a lawyer. This might fall under misappropriation, especially if the fund was designated specifically for your education." So I did. I made an appointment with a campus legal aid rep. Brought them everything, the fund documentation, the bank statements, my own financial history, even printed out emails from Grandpa over the years mentioning, "Adding something extra for your future," that I'd always brushed off as vague birthday stuff. The rep looked at me for a long time and said, "Noah, they might have committed a felony." I didn't want to believe it. Still didn't. These were my parents. They tucked me in. They taught me to ride a bike. They bought me a Lego set after my tonsil surgery. And now they were people I might have to take to court. That weekend, I went radio silent. Didn't answer calls. Didn't post online. I needed space, needed time to think, but the silence only made them louder. On Sunday night, there was a knock at my apartment door. I opened it to find my dad standing there. He looked tired, like he hadn't slept either. "Can I come in?" I didn't move. "I just want to talk." Still, I said nothing. Then he sighed. "Fine, I'll talk. You listen." He stood awkwardly in the hallway, hands in his coat pockets. "We didn't mean for it to go this far. We just thought we'd pay it back. You were young. You wouldn't notice. Then we fell behind and things got away from us." I stared at him. "You could have told me." "I know," he said. "But your mother thought you'd resent us. She wanted to wait until we could replenish it." "You had 18 years, I said. He flinched. Then he said something that shifted everything. We didn't just use it on ourselves, Noah. We used it on your brother, too. His school, his surgery. He's struggling, you know. He's always needed more help than you. You've always managed. We thought you could handle it. I felt the anger rise again. So, because I was the low-maintenance kid, I got less? He didn't answer, just looked down at his shoes. Then I asked, what would you have done if Grandpa hadn't said anything? Kept lying? Let me drown in debt. He looked up and, for a moment, I swear I saw regret. Real, painful regret. I don't know. There it was. The most honest thing he'd said to me in years. I nodded slowly, then stepped back and closed the door. No yelling, no drama, just quiet. But something in me snapped into place after that. I wasn't just going to move on. Couldn't. They made a choice. Now it was my turn. I didn't sleep that night either. After I closed the door in his face, I leaned against it for a long time, listening to his footsteps retreat down the hallway. I expected to feel some kind of satisfaction, some weight lifted off my chest. But I didn't. My stomach churned. Not with doubt, no, I was sure of what they did, but with grief. The kind that crawls in when you finally see your parents not as guardians, but as deeply flawed people who chose themselves over you. The next morning, I got a text from my mom. Just 4 words. We're so sorry. I didn't reply. I went to class, pretended to take notes, pretended to listen. But my mind kept playing the same loop. My dad's voice saying, you've always managed. Like my independence was a punishment. Like doing okay meant I didn't deserve help. That night, I sat down with my laptop and started drafting something. Not an email, not a letter, a formal legal request. The campus legal advisor had already walked me through the steps. If the trust fund was set up in my name and intended specifically for my education, my parents could be liable for misappropriation, especially if they used the money for non-educational purposes. The lawyer had used the word restitution a few times. I hadn't asked what the consequences might be yet. I wasn't ready to hear it, but I was ready to start the process. So I did. I filed the request through the proper channel and CC'd the bank's trust department and my advisor. I didn't even tell Grandpa yet. I wasn't sure how he'd take it. He still believed in family. I wasn't sure I did anymore. 2 days later, I got a call. Blocked number. I usually don't answer those, but something told me I should. It was my mom. Noah, she said, breathless like she'd been crying. Please don't do this. We'll pay it back. We'll figure it out. You don't have to ruin everything. Her voice cracked on the word ruin. I didn't say anything at first. Then I asked, how much did you take? She hesitated. We didn't keep track. It was over the years. The bank did, I said flatly. Silence. Then we didn't think it would matter this much. You got scholarships. You're doing fine. That word again. Fine. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I stayed calm. I've been eating canned soup for 3 years, Mom. I've walked 2 miles in the rain because I couldn't afford a bus pass. You left me to figure it out while pretending nothing existed. And you want me to be grateful I managed. We were trying to help the family, she whispered. No, you were trying to survive and you chose who mattered more. Click. I hung up. I didn't even realize my hands were shaking until I saw the cursor blinking on my screen again. Over the next week, word spread. I don't know how, but someone told Grandpa. Maybe it was my aunt. Maybe Mason overheard something. I don't know. But that Sunday, I got a call from him. Noah, he said, voice low and steady. Can we meet for coffee? Just you and me. I agreed. We met at this quiet diner near my school. He was already sitting at a booth when I arrived, stirring a cup of black coffee like it held all the answers. He looked up at me and didn't smile. I'm sorry, he said. You didn't do anything, I replied. No, he said. But I trusted people who did, and I should have checked. I should have made sure. I sat down slowly. I looked into the trust, he continued. It's gone. Every cent. And I've already spoken to the bank. They're cooperating. If you want to pursue charges, well, you have every right. I didn't say anything. I also found out something else, he added. When your dad asked me to set the fund in his and your mother's name, he said it was for convenience, that it would be safer that way, easier to manage. I believed him. He looked at me, eyes full of something I hadn't seen in years. Shame. I should have known better. We sat in silence for a moment. Then I said, "They kept it a secret for over a decade, and the only reason I found out was because you said something without knowing." He nodded. Then he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out an envelope, placed it on the table between us. "I can't undo what they did, but this is yours." I stared at the envelope, didn't touch it. He sighed. "It's not enough to cover everything, but it's a start, and I want you to know I'm changing my will. Everything I leave behind will go into a separate trust only for you and your future. No one else touches it. Not again." I looked at him, really looked at him. I believed him. I think that's what hurt most, that he believed in me and they didn't. When I finally opened the envelope that night, it was a cashier's check for $10,000. I should have felt relief, but all I felt was anger. $10,000 meant something. It meant someone believed I was worth it. My own parents never did. The next day, I filed a formal complaint with the Family Trust's legal department. And then I started planning something I never thought I'd have the nerve to do because winter break was coming and we always hosted Christmas at our house. Christmas came fast, too fast. It was the first time I truly dreaded going home. Not in that joking, "Ugh, can't wait for Aunt Denise's casserole" kind of way, but in the deep, bone-heavy sense of walking into enemy territory. I didn't even pack much, just a single overnight bag. No gifts, no cards, nothing wrapped in cheerful paper or tied with a bow. I wasn't in the mood for pretending. I had already told Grandpa I'd be coming. He didn't try to talk me out of it, just said, "You sure you're ready?" I was, not because I had forgiven anything, but because some things needed to be said face to face. The air was sharp and cold when I pulled into the driveway. Snow still clung to the edges of the lawn and the house looked exactly the same. Warm, glowing, festive. If you didn't know better, you'd think it was the perfect family home. But I did know better. The moment I stepped through the door, I was greeted by the smell of cinnamon and roasted meat. Christmas music played softly in the background. My mom was in the kitchen laughing too loudly with my aunt. My dad sat on the couch with a glass of something dark, chatting with my uncle like nothing had happened. They both froze when they saw me. My mom's face stiffened. My dad didn't even stand. I didn't bother with small talk. Just nodded, took off my coat, and walked straight to the dining room where the rest of the family was gathered. Grandpa was already there. He gave me a small nod. Beside him was Grandma, who hadn't looked me in the eye since Thanksgiving. My brother sat at the far end of the table, still glued to his phone. He didn't acknowledge me at all. Dinner was served. It was tense. Everyone acted like they were walking on ice, trying not to be the first one to slip. Conversation stayed surface level. Weather, traffic, work. No one mentioned the trust. No one mentioned the legal complaint I had filed. They probably thought I wouldn't go through with it, that I'd cool off, that I'd be the good kid again. But I wasn't here to be good. I was here for closure. The moment came after dessert. My dad stood up to give his usual Christmas toast. He raised his glass, gave the standard spiel about family, love, and resilience. Then he said it, "We're just so proud of how far our kids have come. Even in tough times, we've always stuck together." And that was the final spark. I stood up before he could sit back down. "You've always stuck together," I repeated. "Right? Except when it came to being honest. Except when it came to me." Silence fell. I reached into my bag and pulled out a folder, neatly printed, bound with labeled sections. I set it on the table. "That's the full breakdown," I said calmly, "of the trust fund you drained, every withdrawal, every date, every cent cross-referenced with my student loan statements. Just in case anyone here still thinks I'm overreacting." My mom's face crumpled. My dad's jaw clenched. I looked at Grandpa. "You asked me if I was sure I was ready. I am." Then I turned to the rest of the table. I worked 3 jobs through college. I skipped meals. I missed out on experiences because I thought we didn't have money. I blamed myself. I thought I was just unlucky. Meanwhile, my parents were quietly spending the fund my grandparents created for my future on themselves. My brother looked up at that. It wasn't all on them, he said. Some of it was for me. Yeah, I said, locking eyes with him. Braces, private tutoring, new laptop every year. While I was repairing mine with duct tape. Grandma spoke up, her voice cracking. We didn't know, Noah. We're so sorry. I nodded once. I believe you, but this isn't just about money. It's about respect, about trust, and about choices. I turned to my parents. You could have told me the truth at any point, even after the fund was gone. But you didn't. You let me believe we were all struggling together when really, you just let me struggle alone. My mom whispered, we thought we were doing what was best. For who? I asked. For me or for the version of me that didn't ask questions? They didn't answer. I took a breath. I filed a formal complaint with the bank. Legal proceedings are in motion. I'm not doing this to hurt you. I'm doing this because actions have consequences and because I'm done carrying this burden alone. My dad stood up slowly. You're suing us? Your own parents. No, I said. I'm holding you accountable. He scoffed. You'd really tear this family apart over some money? And that was it. No, I said. You did that the moment you decided I didn't matter as much. I picked up the folder and walked to the living room. Everyone stayed frozen at the table. I took out one final envelope, my Christmas gift. Set it on the mantel. Then I turned to the room. I won't be staying tonight. I don't know when, if I'll come back. But that envelope has copies of the legal documentation in case anyone wants to see for themselves. And a letter explaining everything, just so no one can say they didn't know. My mom was crying now. My dad just stared at the wall. Grandpa stood up and walked over to me. You don't have to do this alone, he said quietly. You have more family than you think. I nodded. I know. Thank you. He hugged me, the only one who did. Then I walked out of the house into the snow-covered night. No one followed me. A week later, I got a letter from the bank confirming the investigation had begun. If fraud or misappropriation could be proven, and all signs pointed that way, my parents might be required to repay the full amount or face civil penalties. I didn't celebrate. It didn't feel like a win, just a necessary reckoning. But what I did do, finally, was pay off part of my student loan. With the check Grandpa had given me, I transferred the rest to a new account under my name only. I graduated the following spring with honors. Got my first paycheck from the startup 2 months later. Moved into a new apartment. Bought myself a decent pair of shoes. No duct tape. As for my parents, I don't know. We haven't spoken since Christmas. But sometimes I catch myself thinking about that night. The moment my grandpa said, "Glad you're enjoying the college fund." The way everything cracked open from there. And I realized it wasn't the loss of money that hurt the most. It was the loss of belief. The realization that the people who were supposed to protect me didn't. But I'm still standing and I finally know what I'm worth. Not because of a trust fund, but because I stopped trusting the wrong people and started trusting myself. Now on to the next story. Story 5. It was a Tuesday when the text came through. Just 3 words. We all agreed. At first, I wasn't sure what it meant, but the pit in my stomach already knew. A minute later, my phone buzzed again, and this time it was a full sentence sent by my mom. We all agreed. You're not welcome at the wedding. No punctuation, just that smug little dash she always used when she wanted to sound formal. A smirk in text form. I stared at the message, rereading it like the words might somehow change if I blinked hard enough. But they didn't. My sister's wedding, the one I helped pay for, the one I helped plan, the one where I'd spent months putting out emotional fires, listening to crying fits, and booking every vendor because my sister Sarah was too stressed to deal with it. The same Sarah who 2 weeks ago called me her emotional rock while I wired over another $1,500 for centerpieces that looked like Pinterest threw up on a florist. My name's Kyle. I'm 31. And up until that message, I thought I was doing something good. Being the glue that held things together for a family that always seemed just one missed call away from falling apart. I'm not rich, not by any means, but I've worked in it long enough to put some money away. I've lived modestly, stayed single, and saved while everyone else splurged and borrowed. For years, I thought that meant I was blessed and they were just unlucky. Turns out being the responsible one just makes you the family ATM with no overdraft protection. The wedding was supposed to be next Saturday, a beachside venue on the coast with a ridiculous ivory and gold theme my sister insisted was classy but looked more like a royal baby shower. I paid for half the venue deposit, booked the flights, even reserved the honeymoon suite in Cabo under my name because my mom's credit wasn't good enough to secure the reservation. And now I wasn't welcome. I didn't respond to the message. I didn't need to. Instead, I opened my laptop and quietly logged into the travel portal I'd used for the honeymoon flights. 2 round-trip tickets, business class, under my email. I clicked cancel and watched the screen blink for a second before the $3,800 refund notification popped up. Then I went into my savings account and initiated a transfer. $16,500. The exact amount I had wired to my mom last month for what she claimed was wedding overflow costs. I didn't say a word to anyone, just watched the numbers move. I felt nothing. Not anger. Not even sadness. Just a strange sort of calm. Like I'd been holding my breath for years and finally exhaled. The first call came at 8:17 p.m. It was my sister. I let it ring. Then came my cousin, then my uncle, then mom. I turned off notifications and went about my night, reheating leftovers and watching a documentary I didn't absorb a second of. By morning, there were 23 missed calls, 4 voicemails, and a single message that made my hand go cold. Please call me. It's Dad. That stopped me. My dad usually stays out of the chaos. He's a quiet man, the kind who'd rather tinker with a busted coffee maker than get involved in family drama. When I was a kid, I used to think he didn't care. As I got older, I realized it wasn't that. He just picked his battles carefully. And for him to step into this one, something was off. But before I could process it, the voicemail started playing in my head, echoing even though I hadn't hit play. I imagined Sarah's whiny tone, Mom's theatrical sobbing, maybe a guilt-laced message from an aunt who hadn't texted me in 2 years. I wanted to delete them all. I really did. But that one message from Dad lingered. This didn't come out of nowhere. Started small. A sideways comment here. A joke there. Last Christmas, Mom said, "Well, at least Sarah will give us grandkids. Not everyone can say that." At the time, I laughed it off. I've never wanted kids, and I'm okay with that, but it stung in a way I didn't admit. Then, during Sarah's engagement dinner, I noticed I wasn't seated at the main table. Just to keep things even, Mom had said, but my younger cousin's boyfriend, who'd only been around for 3 months, was seated next to the groom. I swallowed that one, too. Like always, they were always little paper cuts, never big enough to justify a confrontation until suddenly they were. After Sarah got engaged, everything became an emergency. Mom called me in a panic over cake samples. Sarah had meltdowns about bridesmaid dresses. I was expected to cover whatever the groom's family didn't, and I did because I thought helping meant belonging. I thought showing up with my wallet was how I proved I mattered. But it never bought me a seat. It just made me the unpaid intern of their fantasy wedding. And now I wasn't even invited. I sat on the edge of my bed that morning, my laptop still open, the email confirmation of the canceled flights glowing like a quiet middle finger. I scrolled through the missed calls, each name a little louder than the last. Then I got to the message from Dad. Just 6 words. "You need to see this now." That's when my stomach dropped. I stared at the message from Dad, my thumb hovering over the screen. "You need to see this now." 6 words, but they carry the weight of something heavier than guilt. My father has always been a man of few words, but every one of them is measured. He's not dramatic like Mom, not manipulative like Sarah, and definitely not the type to panic. So, if he said I needed to see something, it wasn't going to be another teary voicemail or passive-aggressive family group chat post. I called him. He picked up before the second ring. "Kyle," he said, voice low. "You got a minute?" "Yeah," I said, and suddenly my mouth was dry. "What's going on?" There was a pause. I could hear the muffled thrum of a television in the background. Then the volume clicked off. "I didn't know they were going to do that. Your mom and your sister. I just found out this morning after they locked down the seating chart and made the announcement in the family group chat." "I'm not even in the group chat." I muttered, more to myself than him. I know, he replied quietly. That's part of it. Another pause. Then he said, Kyle, they told everyone you chose not to come. That hit me harder than I expected. I blinked, trying to make sense of it. What? They said you were pulling one of your loner stunts. That you got upset over something minor and backed out. Sarah told the family you were always a bit dramatic and this time you went too far, that you didn't want to be there. I laughed. Sharp, bitter, humorless. So they kicked me out and made it my decision. Worse, he said. Your mom said you threatened to ruin the wedding if you came. That knocked the breath out of me. She what? Dad sighed, like he didn't want to be the one saying this. She told Sarah's in-laws you were emotionally unstable, still bitter about being single, and that you were jealous of your sister's happy ending. Said you were making everything about you like usual. Like usual? My voice cracked. I had to stand up. My apartment suddenly felt like it was shrinking. I know, son, Dad said quickly. I know that's not who you are. I've watched you pick up every piece they dropped. You handled that entire engagement party and no one thanked you. You paid off Mom's second credit card last summer without saying a word. You showed up every time they didn't, but they don't see that. Or maybe they do, and it threatens them. I leaned against the kitchen counter, my hands shaking. So this whole thing, this exile, was a setup to make me the bad guy? Dad hesitated. Then, with an exhale, said, It's worse than that. They already started telling people you refused to fund the honeymoon out of spite. That's when I knew something had changed in me. Something broke, but not in the way I thought it would. I wasn't hurt anymore. I wasn't even angry. I felt detached, cold. Like I was watching a rerun of a show I used to care about but now knew all the plot twists to. They took the money, Dad, I said flatly. $16,500 wired to Mom's account for the honeymoon. I canceled the flights last night. The refund's already back in my account. He was silent for a moment, then softly, Good. It was the first time in years my father had supported one of my decisions that openly. He wasn't a man of grand gestures, but that one word meant everything. Then he added, There's something else. I wasn't going to tell you, but I think you need to see it. I heard rustling on the other end, then the ping of a message coming through. I opened my phone. It was a screenshot of a group chat. Mom, Sarah, and a few of the aunts. My name was mentioned in the thread. Mom texted, Don't worry about Kyle. He's just sensitive because no one's ever loved him enough to marry him. I'll talk to him after the wedding once he realizes how childish he's being. Sarah texted, He's a ghost. Let him fade. Just need to make sure he doesn't embarrass us. And Cheryl texted, So we're agreed. No +1 for him, even if he begs. Mom texted, Exactly. No seat, no speech, no drama. He'll get over it. He always does. I read the messages twice, then a third time, and then I deleted them. Not out of denial, but because I didn't need to see them again to know the truth. I'd always been an outsider in my own family. The helper, the fixer, the invisible glue. But glue doesn't get a seat at the table. It just holds everything else together while it cracks. And they were right about one thing. I wasn't going to beg. That evening, I sat down and began making a list. Not of people to confront, but of systems to dismantle. They wanted me to fade quietly, but they'd forgotten something. I was the one holding the strings. The joint Costco membership with Mom? Cancelled. The Hulu, Netflix, Disney Plus family plans? Removed their profiles. The auto payments I'd been quietly making on Sarah's student loan? Disabled. And the best part, the venue deposit for the wedding was still under my name. Technically, I was the primary contract holder. They'd never paid me back for that check I wrote to lock in the date. I'd been meaning to deal with that paperwork later. Now it was at the top of my list. As I stared at the contract, hovering over the cancel reservation option, I smiled for the first time that day because if they thought I was dramatic before, they hadn't seen anything yet. By Wednesday morning, the silence from my end had them spiraling. The voicemails went from passive-aggressive to desperate. Sarah's tone morphed with every message. First annoyed, then pleading. Kyle, can we talk? I think there's been a huge misunderstanding. Mom didn't mean it that way. I didn't respond. I listened with my arms crossed. Each new message only confirming what I already knew. They were trying to put the toothpaste back in the tube, and it was far too late for that. But I wasn't interested in revenge for the sake of ego. This wasn't about lashing out. This was about letting go and making sure they felt it. That afternoon, I sat down with a black notebook and started writing out every account, every auto payment, every password-protected bill I had my name attached to. I wasn't dramatic. I was thorough. The irony. They called me the cold one, the robot, the one who didn't feel things like the rest of them. They were right in a way. I didn't blow up. I didn't scream. I calculated. I logged in. Mom's phone plan, which I'd been paying for since 2019 when she got laid off. Suspended. She wouldn't even notice until she tried to make a call during her hair trial on Friday. Sarah's Venmo, which was connected to my bank as a backup card from when she overdrafted 3 times during college and never figured out how to remove it. Unlinked. And then I reported the suspicious charges on my account just for fun. Fraud protection is a beautiful thing. By Thursday morning, I had an email from the wedding venue. A polite but firm confirmation. Your cancellation request has been received. Per the contract, your deposit will be forfeited unless a replacement booking is secured. I smiled. Let them explain that to the 118 guests flying in for a Saturday ceremony that suddenly didn't have a legal reservation. Around noon, my cousin Mark called. He's the only one who ever treated me like a person, not a tool. His voice was tired. Kyle, what's happening? I didn't lie. I'm done funding a family that sees me as a wallet with legs. He sighed. They're freaking out. Good. Sarah's having a meltdown. She's saying you're ruining her marriage. I gave a dry laugh. If a canceled flight and a frozen honeymoon fund ruins a marriage, maybe it wasn't built to last. He didn't argue. He just said, I wish you'd told me sooner. I always knew they leaned on you too much. That night, I opened my laptop again and logged into my dad's old Dropbox account. The one we used when I helped him digitize all the family records a few years back. Inside was a goldmine of scanned receipts, emails, even the original invoice from the engagement party that I paid for but Mom conveniently forgot I covered. I created a new Google Drive folder, uploaded everything, and entitled it, Contributions from Kyle Nobody Wanted. Then I copied the link and sent it to every family member on the group thread. I didn't write a caption. I didn't need one. Less than 5 minutes later, I was kicked out of the family chat. Perfect. But the real turn came Friday morning, the day before the wedding. I was sipping coffee, enjoying the quiet, when I got an email from the groom's mother, Linda. We'd met once. She was kind, poised, and very by the book. The kind of woman who kept her silverware aligned and said, darling, instead of sweetie. Her message was short, but it rattled me more than any voicemail. Subject: concern about the wedding. Hi, Kyle. I wanted to reach out directly. I've heard bits and pieces about what's going on, and quite frankly, I'm alarmed. If you have a moment, could we speak? I feel like I'm missing some very important information. Best, Linda. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just family gossip anymore. This was a thread unraveling from both ends. I called her. She answered immediately. Thank you for calling, she said, formal but with an edge of concern. I don't mean to overstep, but my son just informed me that the venue may have been canceled. It was, I said plainly. I paid the deposit. It was under my name. She was quiet for a second. That's not what we were told. I'm sure. Another pause. She cleared her throat. Kyle, I don't know what's been said, but I was told you declined to come. That you'd backed out because you were bitter. I let the silence hang, then asked, do bitter people usually pay for floral arrangements, the wedding cake, the DJ, and half the venue? Linda inhaled sharply. I was unaware of any of that. Of course you were. They needed someone to blame when I pulled out. And when I stopped funding it, they made sure to do what they always do. Point the finger at me. Her voice lowered. I understand now why you've distanced yourself. I would have too. But Kyle, there's something you should know. Sarah. She opened a joint credit card with your mom last week, and she used your name on the application. I froze. What? They claimed you co-signed. My husband caught it when we reviewed the final expenses. He recognized your name on the paperwork. That was it. That was the part that changed everything. I wasn't just the family ATM anymore. I was a target. I sat there, my coffee suddenly cold in my hand, the room closing in around me as Linda's words echoed in my ear. They claimed you co-signed. I hadn't, not even close. I've always been careful about credit, guarded even. After watching Mom default on a car loan in my early 20s and drag her credit into the basement with mine tethered behind it. Because yes, she had convinced me to co-sign that. I'd spent the better part of a decade fixing my financial reputation. I knew better. I hadn't signed anything for this wedding outside of what I paid for directly. Do you have a copy of the application? I asked Linda, my voice calm but clipped. I do, she said. Would you like me to send it to you? Immediately, please. A few minutes later, it landed in my inbox. There it was, staring back at me. An application for a high-limit wedding credit card with a forged digital signature. My name, address, social security number, even my old work email, probably lifted from tax forms or bank records they still had lying around. I didn't feel rage. I didn't feel sad. I felt clear. All these years, I'd been the fallback plan, the fixer, the silent financier. But forging my name? That wasn't desperation. That was entitlement soaked in fraud. That was theft. And it was the final straw. I filed a fraud report with the credit card company and took screenshots of every detail. Then I filed a police report. I attached the documentation, the forged application, and a notarized statement of non-consent. Then I picked up my phone, and for the first time since Mom's smug message that started all this, I called her. She answered on the second ring like she'd been waiting. Kyle, she said, her voice overly cheerful. I was just about to call you. Stop, I said flat. I just want to hear it from you. Did you sign my name on a credit card application? Silence. Kyle, you're being ridiculous. That was just a backup in case the honeymoon ran over. You know how these things go. Did you sign my name? A long pause. Then, Sarah said you would have done it if you knew it was important. I let that hang there like a guillotine. That's not an answer, I said, my voice cold. But it's fine. You can explain it to the investigator when they call. That cracked her mask. What? Are you serious, Kyle? We're family. You're really going to make this ugly over a little misunderstanding. Mom, I said, cutting her off. You kicked me out of a wedding I paid for, lied to everyone about it, and committed fraud in my name. I didn't make this ugly. You did. I'm just putting it in the light where it belongs. Kyle, honey, please, we can fix this. I hung up. That evening, I drove to my dad's place. He was waiting for me on the porch with 2 beers and that silent, weathered look he always wore when things got heavy. You okay? He asked as I sat beside him. I nodded slowly. Getting there. We didn't talk much. We didn't need to. He just handed me the beer and we watched the sun dip below the trees. Eventually, he said, You did the right thing. And somehow that meant more than anything. The fallout came fast. First came the phone calls from family. My aunts, my cousins, even Uncle Greg, who hadn't spoken to me since 2016. They all wanted to know what was really going on. Why the wedding was off. Why Sarah had posted a cryptic Instagram story about being betrayed by blood. I didn't respond. Then came the texts, the apologies, the guilt trips. Kyle, I had no idea. We should have stood up for you. Can we please talk? But I was done being their emotional janitor. I let the calls go to voicemail, let the texts sit unread. As for the wedding, it never happened. With the venue canceled and no backup secured, they tried to pivot to a backyard ceremony. But the guests were confused. Some turned around mid-flight, and the groom's family, having learned about the forged credit card, called the whole thing off. Apparently, financial fraud before the vows isn't a great look. Sarah went on a posting spree, cryptic stories, Bible verses, passive-aggressive quotes about snakes in the grass and family who turns their back on you. I didn't flinch. Because here's the thing. Sometimes the best revenge isn't a dramatic confrontation. It's not yelling or exposing someone in front of a crowd. Sometimes it's just clarity. Quietly dismantling the system that took you for granted. Walking away while the whole rotten house collapses behind you. About a week later, I got a final message from Mom. "You've made your point. We're all hurting. You didn't have to go this far." I didn't reply. Instead, I changed my number. I took a few days off work and booked a trip solo. Just me and my laptop on the same resort Sarah was supposed to honeymoon at. Funny thing about being the one who booked everything under your name. You know the cancellation policies. I changed the dates, upgraded the suite, took her champagne package and added it to my reservation. And I sat on that balcony, drinking, waves rolling beneath me, thinking about how long I'd waited for someone to see me. But I finally saw myself. Not the version they needed me to be. Not the fixer, not the bank account, just Kyle. 31, free, and finally done trying to earn love I never owed them in the first place. I don't know if they'll ever really understand what they lost, but I do. And I'm not giving it back. Now on to the next story. Story 6. My name's Adam. I'm 28. And until about a month ago, I lived in the guest room of my parents' house. Not by choice. Honestly, if I could have been anywhere else, I would have. But things don't always go as planned. After graduating with a degree in computer science, I landed a solid job at a mid-sized tech firm. Then the pandemic hit. The company downsized and I was one of the first to be let go. Over the next year and a half, I applied to hundreds of jobs. Interviews came and went, but nothing stuck. Eventually, my savings ran dry and the only option I had left was to move back home. I thought it would be temporary. My parents didn't. At first, it wasn't awful. My dad, Mark, was always more reserved, a don't ask, don't tell kind of guy. My mom, Diane, though, she made sure I felt the weight of every meal I ate and every light switch I flipped. "This isn't a hotel," she would say at least once a week. She'd sigh loud enough for the neighbors to hear if I dared leave a cup in the sink. At first, I chalked it up to stress. But the passive-aggressive comments soon turned into open criticism. "You know, your cousin Rachel just bought a house, and she's 2 years younger than you," she'd say while wiping the already clean kitchen counter for the 5th time that morning. Or, "It's really sad you're still here. At your age, your father and I were raising you by the time we were 28. I tried to help. I offered to cook, clean, mow the lawn, fix the router when it acted up. I freelanced where I could, built websites for local businesses, helped a family friend set up an online store. I wasn't just lying on the couch binging TV. But in her eyes, it didn't matter. I was still the leech. It didn't help that my younger brother, Jordan, was their golden child. He's 24, works in finance, lives in a high-rise downtown, and makes sure everyone knows it. He rarely visits unless there's a holiday, or Mom begs him to come over for dinner. But when he walks in, it's like Moses parting the Red Sea. Suddenly, my mom's whole mood lifts. Her voice gets sweet and cheerful. "There's my baby. You look so fit. Are you working out?" Meanwhile, I'm in the corner holding a trash bag full of recycling, trying not to be noticed. One evening, Jordan came by for dinner, and I could feel it brewing. I was setting the table, placing mismatched plates down with the usual carelessness I've grown accustomed to, since they always treat me like I don't belong. Anyway, Jordan barely acknowledged me. He made some comment about gas prices and how some people are lucky they don't have to commute. I didn't take the bait, but then Mom poured him a drink and laughed a little too loudly at something he said. She turned to me and asked, "Have you even tried applying for real jobs lately?" My chest tightened. I'd already told her about the 2 interviews I had that week, but she didn't care. Jordan chimed in, "You know, at some point it stops being bad luck and starts being bad choices." He wasn't even looking at me when he said it. That was the night things snapped. I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I just picked up my plate, walked back to the kitchen, and ate standing up at the counter like I was 12 years old again. I could hear them laughing in the dining room. The words blurred, but I caught snippets. Can't cuddle forever. Needs to grow up. Embarrassing at this point. The next day, I was sitting in the den, laptop open, trying to finish a freelance job, redesigning a local bakery's website when Mom walked in. She didn't knock. She never knocks. She stood in the doorway with her arms crossed, and I knew something was coming. "You need to start paying rent," she said flatly. I nodded. I'd heard this before. I already said I'd help out once I finished this site. They're paying. I'm not talking about maybe someday. I'm talking now. Today? I stared at her, confused. "You want me to write you a check with money I don't have?" "No, Adam. I want you to grow up. This has gone on long enough. We've done more than our share. You're just a leech living off us." The word slapped me harder than I expected. Leech. She said it with this look of disgust, like I was something stuck to the bottom of her shoe. Before I could even reply, she turned and started dragging a duffel bag from the closet. I barely had time to react when she stormed back into the room, threw the bag at my feet, and said, "Go leech somewhere else." I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I zipped the bag up, packed my laptop, charger, and toothbrush and left. Not a single word. Just the echo of that word, leech, chasing me down the driveway. I couch surfed for a bit, first with my friend Lucas, then stayed a few days with my ex, who was kind enough to let me crash while I figured things out. But that time on my own, scary as it was, pushed me to go all in. I took on more freelance jobs, even helped a local artist build an e-commerce site to sell her prints. One night, out of nowhere, I got a LinkedIn message from a recruiter who had seen my freelance portfolio. Within a week, I was interviewing for a remote position with a tech startup, and I got the job. Paid decently, not Silicon Valley money, but enough to start reclaiming my life. The best part, it came with full benefits and the option to work from anywhere. So, I did something that surprised even me. I used the money I'd been saving from freelancing and got a studio apartment. Tiny but mine. No one could throw me out of it. No one could call me a burden. About 3 weeks after I moved in, I was finishing up a project when I noticed a call from my dad. I hadn't heard from him since I left. Not even a "how are you?" I let it go to voicemail. Then another call came in. Then a text. "Why did the bank freeze our account?" I blinked. What? Then I remembered something. Something I hadn't thought about in weeks. Back when I was jobless, Dad had asked me to help him switch over their joint banking setup. He was tired of driving to the bank, and since I was good with tech stuff, he asked me to set up their online access, their mobile banking, and crucially link their account with their tax software. I'd walked them through every step. We added my email and number as recovery contacts. I was even a secondary administrator on their joint account. Not to spend anything, but to troubleshoot if anything went wrong. And no, that access was still there. I didn't reply right away. I sat there just staring at the message. I imagined them sitting at the dining room table, my mom pacing, my dad fumbling with the bank app, maybe even calling the helpline, only to be told there was a verification lockout and they'd need secondary contact access to regain control. That's when I typed out a reply, "Ask the leech." No emojis, no explanation, just those 3 words. And less than an hour later, everything exploded. I barely had time to make lunch before my phone started buzzing again. This time, it was my mom. 3 missed calls in under 5 minutes. Then the text started. Mom texted, "Adam, this isn't funny. Call your father back. We can't pay the credit card bill. Are you really doing this to us after everything we've done for you? Fix this." Now, I didn't answer. For the first time in years, I had leverage and I wasn't going to waste it. I wasn't interested in revenge for the sake of being cruel, but I wanted accountability. I wanted them to see the version of me they never bothered to acknowledge. Not the lazy burden they imagined, but the person who held their household together quietly in the background, paying their bills online, updating their antivirus software, reminding them to file taxes on time, troubleshooting their Wi-Fi, even flagging fraudulent charges on their card once before they noticed. But to them, I was just some ungrateful freeloader. That evening, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I answered it on instinct. "Adam." It was my dad trying to sound calm, but I could hear the strain in his voice. "Look, we need to access our bank account. It's locked." And they said you're listed as the secondary admin. "I don't know what you did, but I didn't do anything," I said evenly. "The security system locked it automatically after multiple failed logins." "Okay, fine. That's fine. Just help us unlock it." There was a pause. I didn't respond. He hesitated. Please. The word landed awkwardly, like a foreign language he hadn't spoken in years. Sure, I said. But I'd like to talk about something first. Silence. Like why your wife screamed at me in front of Jordan, called me a leech, and threw my stuff out? Another pause. Adam, let's not. No, we are going to. You want me to clean up your mess again? Then you're going to listen. Not talk. Not excuse, just listen. There was a quiet sigh on the other end, but he didn't hang up. I didn't ask to move back. I didn't want to be in that house again, but I did everything I could to help. Cooked. Cleaned. I fixed things. I made money. Not much, but enough to pay for my own food and give you gas money when the car broke down. And for all that, I got treated like a stray dog at your dinner table. Adam, I'm not done. My voice cracked a little. I felt the years of frustration pushing up from my throat. Everything I'd swallowed back. Every time they dismissed me, she called me a leech. She kicked me out like trash and you just stood there. You let her. He didn't respond. She humiliated me in front of Jordan like I was some pathetic loser. But the truth is, your bank account has been running smoothly because I've been the one keeping it that way. You didn't even know how to reset your password without me. Okay, he muttered. You've made your point. No, I haven't. I stood up from my chair and started pacing my small apartment. You two acted like I was some failure who needed to be kicked while I was already down. And now you need me. Another long pause. Yes, he finally admitted. We do. The simplicity of those 3 words hit me harder than I expected. Not in a good way, more like a sudden gust of wind that knocks the breath out of you. Because I realized right then they didn't care why I was struggling. They only noticed me when I was useful. Still, I wasn't cruel. I wouldn't let bills go unpaid out of spite, but I also wasn't going to let this slide like I always did. I offered terms. I'd unlock the account, but first, I wanted an apology from both of them, a real one in person. And no, not just a mumbled sorry. While Dad fidgeted and Mom pretended like none of it had happened. I wanted acknowledgement, and I wanted space. No requests for favors for at least 6 months. No guilt trips, no surprise visits, and I'd be removing myself as an admin on every one of their financial tools forever. You can manage your own banking from now on, I said. Or get Jordan to help. My dad sighed again. She's not going to like this. I didn't like getting thrown out of the house I grew up in. There was a short silence. I'll talk to her. The call ended. I felt my hands trembling. Part anger, part adrenaline, part sadness. I'd never spoken to my dad like that before. Not once. But I didn't feel bad. Not this time. 2 days passed before I heard back. This time it was an email from my mom. Short, awkwardly formal. It started with, I realize I said things I shouldn't have, and ended with, we hope you're doing well. No signature. No love, Mom. But I got what I asked for. I unlocked the account and removed myself from it immediately after. Then I blocked their number for a week. Not to punish them, just to breathe, to think. And then the real fallout started. Because the thing is, when you remove the person doing all the invisible labor, when the leech walks away, suddenly everyone sees just how much they relied on them. I found out what happened next. Not through a phone call, not through a knock at my door, but through my cousin Lily's Instagram story. She had taken a quick boomerang video during Sunday brunch at Grandma's house. Mom sitting stiffly at the far end of the table, wine glass untouched, lips pursed like she'd bitten into a lemon. My dad was beside her, rubbing his temples, looking like a man who had just learned how to use the internet and failed. Meanwhile, Jordan sat across from them, his smug grin replaced by a furrowed brow. The caption, when the group project loses the only person who knew how to do anything. #family drama. I DM'd her with a simple, what happened? Her reply came fast, LOL. Your mom's been trying to figure out how to log into her online banking for a week. She locked the account again this morning. Jordan came over to fix it and somehow made it worse. Now she's saying, you sabotaged it on purpose. I stared at the screen, genuinely stunned at how fast the blame had boomeranged back to me. But I couldn't even feel angry, just tired. The kind of tired that runs deeper than sleep. Because there it was again. No matter how much I helped, no matter how quietly I worked behind the scenes, the moment things went wrong, I was the villain in their story. It didn't stop there. Apparently, after I removed myself from their tax filing access, my dad realized he hadn't saved the login credentials for the new system I set up for them last year. When he called customer support, they asked him to verify his last filed return, which of course I had submitted for him through my email with a password saved in a private Google Drive he no longer had access to. That alone might have been recoverable if not for the fact that Jordan, in his infinite wisdom, decided to start fresh and tried to create a new account using my dad's social security number. The system flagged it as potential identity theft and locked everything: tax software, online statements, even his HSA portal. They couldn't access a dime. Lily told me this with the glee of someone watching a soap opera play out in real life. Your mom told Grandma that she thinks you hacked them out of revenge. Laughing emoji. I just texted back, I warned them. And I had. I warned them clearly, firmly, with boundaries, not threats, not games. Boundaries. And they treated it like I was bluffing. A week later, I got a knock on the door of my apartment. I knew it was them before I even looked through the peephole. My building had a specific kind of echo when someone stood in the hall. Slow, heavy footsteps with no urgency. I opened the door slowly. There stood my parents. My mom holding her purse like a shield. My dad's tie slightly crooked like he dressed in a rush. Neither of them spoke. I stepped aside. If you're here to yell, save it. They walked in. The silence stretched for a full minute before my mom finally cleared her throat. We need your help. 3 weeks ago, she threw my bags out and told me to go leech somewhere else. And now she stood in my tiny apartment, looking over the modest IKEA furniture and half-eaten takeout on the counter, asking for help. Felt surreal. My dad tried to explain what had happened, but I already knew. Jordan had tried to fix things, failed miserably, and then ghosted them. Probably too embarrassed to admit he didn't know how to fix something that wasn't in Excel. We can't even access our joint savings, my mom said quietly. We missed our mortgage payment. We're being charged late fees. That sounds awful, I replied. You must feel really stuck. She looked up, and for once the indignation was gone. Her voice trembled just slightly. I'm sorry, she said. I blinked. Not passive-aggressively. Not with caveats. Just, I'm sorry. My dad added, we didn't realize how much you were doing. We thought we were being generous, letting you stay with us, but we didn't see it. That was the moment the dam broke. Not for them, for me. All the weight I'd been carrying, all the silent resentment and hurt and shame, it spilled out. Not in yelling, not in tears, just truth. I told them how it felt to be constantly compared to Jordan, to be treated like a failure, even when I was trying so hard just to get by. How their approval always seemed tied to performance, never to effort. And how being kicked out wasn't just humiliating. It made me realize how replaceable I was to them. My mom sat still, absorbing every word like it stung. I didn't know, she whispered. I believed her, sort of. I think she didn't want to know. There's a difference. They asked me to come back to help to get things running again. Said they'd pay me for my time. Said things would be different, but I shook my head. I'll walk you through fixing everything. I'll write up instructions, but I'm not coming back. I have a job. I have a lease. I have peace. They looked surprised, as if this little studio apartment was some kind of rebellion. But for me, it was sanctuary. I grabbed my laptop and sat them down. It took 2 hours to fix everything. Resetting access, verifying ID, calling tech support. My mom was silent most of the time. My dad kept muttering, "This is ridiculous," under his breath whenever he had to answer another security question. Once we were done, I closed the laptop and stood up. "I'll send over that instruction doc," I said. "But after that, I'm done. No more admin access. No more being the silent tech support. You're adults. You'll figure it out." They stood too. My dad nodded almost respectfully. My mom looked like she wanted to say something more, but didn't. And as they walked out the door, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Freedom. I wish I could say that was the end. that they took my boundaries seriously, that they learned their lesson and we all moved forward with newfound respect. But families, especially mine, don't change overnight. They don't just flip a switch and suddenly become self-aware or humble. What really happened next? That's where the real story begins. 2 weeks after they left my apartment, I started getting odd notifications. Not from my parents, no, they actually left me alone for a while, which surprised me. It was from people around them. My Aunt Cheryl messaged me on Facebook, "Hey sweetie, heard you moved out on your own. That's so great. Diane said you've been distant lately. Just wanted to check in. Everything okay?" Then my cousin Trevor sent me a screenshot of a group chat in which my mom was going off. I think Adam's being manipulated by his new job. He's different, cold, distant. I don't even recognize him anymore. All I did was ask for help and he acted like I'd betrayed him. And then Jordan. He sent me a long, self-important email. "Hey man, I know there's been tension, but I think you need to take some accountability too. Mom and Dad aren't perfect, but they're still our parents. Maybe instead of blaming them, you could just be more understanding. You had a rough patch. We all do. It doesn't mean the world is out to get you. Let's talk soon. Maybe coffee." I deleted it without replying. See, what none of them understood, what still didn't click, was that this wasn't about one fight or one insult or one bad day. It was years. Years of being the default helper, the one who was so smart with tech stuff, but never invited to the adult table. Years of watching my accomplishments get minimized while Jordan's every mediocre win was celebrated like he cured cancer. It was the birthday cards with "maybe next year will be better" written in them while Jordan got expensive watches and family dinners. It was death by 1,000 tiny cuts. But I didn't want revenge, not the petty, dramatic kind where you ruin someone's credit or hack into their social media. I wanted something far more permanent. Distance, dignity, and the satisfaction of building a life without them at the center of it. That opportunity came sooner than expected. About a month after our last interaction, my company announced they were expanding their remote division and opening a satellite office in Toronto. They offered relocation bonuses to a handful of us, and I jumped on it. A fresh start, a new city, 0 family drop-ins. I signed the lease on a small one-bedroom downtown with a skyline view and a corner desk that overlooked the city. It wasn't flashy, but it was mine, paid for by a job I earned. Not a penny of help from the people who called me a leech. I sent one final email to my parents before I left. Not because I owed them anything, but because I wanted to be clear. Subject: Update. Hi Mom and Dad. Just wanted to let you know I'll be relocating to Toronto for work. I won't be available to help with anything moving forward, tech issues, account access, or otherwise. I've removed myself from everything and ensured you have full control. I hope this new chapter gives us all some peace. Take care, Adam. No response. Not even a thumbs up. And that might have stung before, but not anymore. Toronto was everything I hoped it would be. I joined a local coding meetup, made friends quickly, and started volunteering at a nonprofit that helped older adults learn digital literacy. Every time I sat down with someone's grandmother to teach her how to set up two-factor authentication, I thought, this is what patience looks like. This is what respect feels like. Meanwhile, back home, the cracks kept spreading. I found out from Lily, my unofficial family reporter, that my mom had started trying to get Jordan to take over some of the tasks I used to do. He said he was too busy. That didn't stop her from trying to guilt him. Adam used to handle all this without complaining, she told him once. He snapped back, then maybe you shouldn't have treated him like garbage. Apparently, their golden boy had limits, too. Then came the kicker. My dad made a mistake on their taxes. A big one. He accidentally input their mortgage interest in the wrong section of the form, and it triggered an audit. Not a scary federal investigation, just enough of a red flag that they had to go back and refile and talk to the IRS about several years of discrepancies. They tried calling the tax software company, but surprise, they no longer had access to the recovery email. It was now permanently deactivated because I had closed it after cutting ties. They had to hire an accountant, a real one, who charged $150 an hour and didn't respond to texts at midnight. The real pain wasn't the money, though. It was the control. They'd gotten used to having someone at their fingertips. Someone who would fix things immediately out of guilt or fear or some desperate need for approval. That person no longer existed. I didn't even hear about the audit from them. I found out from who else? Lily. Your mom's been in a bad mood for days. Dad messed up the taxes. She muttered something like, if the leech was still around, this wouldn't have happened. LOL. That's when it hit me. Even after everything, she still called me the leech. Not in front of me, of course, but behind closed doors in the safety of people she thought would agree with her. And that should have hurt. It should have reopened the wound. But it didn't, because by then I had proof. Proof that her version of me wasn't real. I had a job I loved, friends who respected me, a landlord who trusted me, a team that relied on me, a name on a lease, a bank account, a digital life that no one else controlled. And in the quiet of my apartment on a chilly Toronto evening, I sat down at my desk, opened my old Google Drive, and deleted the last shared folder I'd ever created for my parents. It was titled Banking for Mom and Dad. Do not delete. I deleted it with one click. Then I smiled, because leeches don't build lives. People do. And I finally remembered who I am. Now on to the next story. Story 7. My parents said they were staying home for the summer. I believed them until I got a notification. $9,860 from my backup account. Flights to Mykonos, luxury suites, a private driver, all in my name. Then, my brother sent a text meant for my mom. He never reads his statements. Don't worry, I replied. Read this. I froze the account and flagged the fraud. By 6 a.m., they were banging furiously on my door. I opened it and saw. It wasn't just theft. It was betrayal, and not the kind you come back from. They were my parents. The same people who told me they couldn't afford a weekend picnic with family, who lectured me last month about wasting money on takeout, who shook their heads when I suggested a short getaway together, saying, this summer we're staying in. It's just too much. And I believed them. I actually believed them. But then came the notification. 3:08 a.m. My phone buzzed on my nightstand. I was barely awake, but something about the number caught my eye. $9,860 withdrawn from your reserve fund. My heart didn't even beat right. I sat up, opened the banking app, and just stared. Every charge was there. First-class flights to Mykonos, a private luxury suite at a resort with its own damn infinity pool, personal driver, designer shopping, restaurant reservations that cost more than my monthly rent. Every single thing booked using my emergency account. The account they weren't even supposed to touch without asking. I scrolled further. Boutique charges, private tour packages, beachfront spa treatments, all in my name. And that's when the second betrayal hit. A text from my brother, sent by accident. He never reads his statements. Don't worry, followed by a face with tears of joy. That's when it all clicked. They thought I'd never notice. They thought I'd be too stupid, too trusting to check. That I'd just assume the balance dropped because of some technicality or bank fee. This wasn't an impulsive decision. It was premeditated. They counted on my silence, my loyalty, my blindness. They didn't get it. I replied one thing, read this. Then I acted fast. I froze the account, flagged every charge as fraud, got a bank rep on the line, reversed every booking, and shut down their access to everything. The refund was on its way, and the dream trip canceled. They'd land in Greece and have nowhere to go. No car, no hotel, no luxury suite, not even a ride from the airport. And I didn't sleep, just sat in the living room in the dark, watching the minutes pass until the fallout hit. At 6:02 a.m., I heard something sharp crack outside, something heavy. I ran to the window and saw the windshield of my car completely shattered. A landscaping rock sat right in the center of it, embedded like a meteor. My dad was standing there, fists clenched, pacing. My mom was behind him, waving her arms. My sister stood at the edge of the driveway, grinning like it was some schoolyard drama she was enjoying. I opened the front door. My father didn't even wait. You selfish little bastard. After everything we've done for you, that money was ours. You gave us access. If you didn't want us to use it, you should have said so. My mom was yelling over him. You embarrassed us. We told everyone about this trip. Do you know how humiliating it is? You're ungrateful. And from the side, my sister yelled, yes. Finally, someone tells him. I didn't say a word, just looked at my car, then back at them. Come in, I said. You want to talk? Let's talk. They marched in, still shouting. I walked to the hallway, closed the bedroom door behind me, and called the police. I gave them the address, told them there was property damage, possible assault, and I had it all on video from the front cam. The officer said they'd be there in under 10 minutes. So I stalled. Let my parents yell. Let them circle the same arguments over and over. Let my dad threaten to cut me off from the family. Let my mom cry. Let my sister mock me from the corner like a little hyena. Then came the knock. The police stepped in and I just pointed at the door. The rock's still on the car and there's video. I want to file a report. They didn't say a word after that. Not until the officer led my dad out and told him he'd need to come down to the station. And even then, my mom just stood there frozen. I filed the report, demanded full compensation for the windshield, and added a note for emotional distress. 2. The refund came through that afternoon, but the real payback was just beginning. After the cops took my dad, the silence in the house was something else. My mom sat stiff on the edge of the couch like she still hadn't processed what had just happened. My sister paced the hallway, arms folded, glancing between the door and me like she couldn't decide who to be mad at. No one said a word for almost 20 minutes. Then my mom's phone rang. I heard her in the kitchen trying to sound calm, but her voice kept cracking. Yes, they took him. Ethan called the police. I don't know what he told them. No, it's not what it looks like. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. I left, drove straight to the station, sat down with the officer, filed a complete statement, and handed over the doorbell cam footage showing my dad throwing the rock straight through the windshield. I told them everything. The financial theft, the verbal threats, the vandalism. I didn't dramatize it, just laid it out clean. No emotion, no yelling. They asked if I wanted to press charges. I said yes, not just for the damage, but for what it meant. That windshield was the last straw. I got a call later that afternoon. My dad had agreed to settle. He transferred the money directly. Reimbursement for the damage plus another $1,000 for emotional distress. His words, not mine. Maybe he thought that would smooth things over. Didn't. When I got home, my mom and sister were still there. My mom didn't look at me. My sister gave me this dirty look like I was the one who betrayed them. I didn't say a word. I went straight to my room and locked the door. I didn't sleep that night. I pulled up every financial record I had tied to them. Bills, tuition payments, subscriptions, logins. I cut every single one. By noon the next day, I called the university, told them I would no longer be responsible for my sister's education costs, and that my financial support ends immediately. They need to sort it out with someone else. They said they'd inform her within the next 24 hours. I let them do it. 3 hours later, she was screaming outside my door. I didn't answer. I heard her throwing something at the wall, probably one of her books. Then she stormed out. I watched her from the upstairs window, pacing in the driveway while calling someone. Probably my mom. 2 days after that, I stopped the auto payments for my mom's arthritis medication. I'd been quietly covering the cost every month because her insurance barely touched it. She never asked me to. I just did it back when I thought helping her meant something. I called the clinic, told them to switch billing back to the patient. I removed my card from everything. No warning, no explanations. Let them feel it. This wasn't about getting even. It was about cutting them off clean. They thought they could use me like an ATM, then destroy my stuff and act like I was the one who crossed the line, like I was supposed to let it go. Just take it. No, the betrayal was too deep for that. This wasn't about a vacation. It was about the fact that they knew what that money was for. My health, my future, my backup in case things got worse. And they didn't care. They didn't even hesitate. And when I called them out, their first instinct was to smash my car and scream at me in my own home. They thought I'd roll over, that I'd feel guilty, that I'd still pay for everything after what they did. But they had no idea who they were dealing with. And the best part? This was only the beginning. They never apologized. Not once. Not for draining my emergency savings. Not for hurling a rock through my windshield. Not even for screaming at me in my own living room like I was a stranger who had broken into their lives. If anything, they doubled down. Every time I checked my phone, I half expected a message, some attempt to fix things, or even just a pathetic excuse. But nothing came. No calls, no texts. My mom went silent. My dad vanished like he didn't exist. My sister was the only one still making noise. Passive-aggressive posts on Instagram. Family is blood, but not everyone deserves yours. Pictures with captions like, cutting off dead weight. She didn't tag me, but she didn't need to. I got the message. Then a letter arrived, a real one in an envelope. No return address, just my name printed in type block letters. Inside was a typed 2-page letter signed by both my parents. Formal, cold. They used words like irreparable damage and family shame. Said I had publicly humiliated them, that my actions were vindictive, ungrateful, and that I was morally compromised. The final line hit harder than the rest. From this moment forward, we no longer consider you our son. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I just folded the letter, placed it in the drawer where I keep my medical paperwork, and closed it slowly. They knew I was sick. They knew what I was saving that money for. My diagnosis wasn't new. I'd been living with a chronic autoimmune condition for 2 years, managing it day by day. Flare-ups, hospital visits, expensive meds, weeks where I could barely work. I told them everything, let them see it all. They were there when I had to quit my last job. They helped me fill out the paperwork for disability aid. They knew what that fund was for, and they still drained it for a luxury vacation. They didn't just steal from me. They stole my safety net, my peace of mind. And then when I fought back, they threw me out like trash. A few days after the letter, my dad left a voicemail. Said he wanted to talk like men. He didn't say sorry. He said maybe he shouldn't have gone that far with the rock, but that I had pushed him. Then he said something that made my skin crawl. You've made your point. Now be a man and make things right with the family. Like I was the one who broke it. So I did exactly what he asked. I made things right my way. First, I called the storage unit company. They'd been keeping antique furniture there, old family heirlooms, paintings my mom claimed were worth something. Some vintage stuff they said they'd sell once the market bounces back. They'd fallen behind on payments a few months ago, and I'd stepped in like an idiot to cover the overdue fees. I was still on the lease, so I canceled the contract. No extension, no heads up. I told the manager to send the standard 2-week pickup notice. Anything left after that would be auctioned. I didn't even tell my parents. Let the email surprise them. Then I tackled the kitchen loan. 3 years ago, they took out a loan for a massive kitchen renovation. Granite everything, double oven, custom cabinets. It was stupidly expensive and the bank wouldn't approve them without a guarantor. I signed it back then because we're family. That phrase feels like poison now. But I called the bank, sent over all the paperwork, told them about the vandalism, the letter, the stolen funds. After a week of back and forth, they removed me from the loan. They'd have to refinance or cover the full remaining balance. Either way, it wasn't my problem anymore. And it felt good. Not petty, clean, because what they did wasn't just a betrayal. It was a declaration. They drew the line. They crossed it. And they made sure I knew exactly where I stood in their world. And still, after everything, I couldn't shut off that one part of me that hoped they'd reach out, that they'd call and say, we messed up, that they'd want to fix things. But the truth kept cutting through that noise. They disowned me over a vacation. They picked luxury over loyalty. And now I was giving them exactly what they wanted. No more son. 2 weeks of silence. That's how long it took for them to go from outrage to desperation. At first, I figured they were licking their wounds. Maybe they finally realized the damage they'd done and were embarrassed. Or maybe they were still hoping I'd crack and come crawling back. Either way, the quiet was unnerving. I kept expecting something dramatic. Another voicemail. Some dramatic text from my mom. My sister showing up to throw a fit. But there was nothing until I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. Ethan, this is Randall Porter. I'm an attorney representing your parents. They've asked me to reach out regarding some shared financial matters. I hung up before he could finish. 5 minutes later, a follow-up voicemail arrived. Same guy, now saying words like mediation, property concerns, and cooperative resolution. Apparently, they wanted to discuss a few shared financial arrangements before things became complicated. Complicated? They already broke into my account, stole 10 grand, destroyed my car, disowned me, and now they were scared things were getting complicated. The next day, my sister showed up. She used an old spare key I forgot to deactivate, like she still had a place in my life. No knock, just walked in like it was still her house. I found her in the kitchen sipping from a mug like it was some family reunion. She said Mom hadn't been eating, that Dad was talking about selling the house, that he was even thinking about pulling money from his retirement. She said I started something none of us could stop. I told her the key wouldn't work next time. She said fine. But before she left, she pulled an envelope from her purse and slid it across the counter. Inside was a will, handwritten. Not official, just something my dad scribbled down on a piece of yellow legal paper. I almost didn't look at it, but one sentence caught my eye. In the event of my death, all assets will be divided equally between Sarah and Melinda. Nothing about me, not even a mention. It was like I'd never existed. She watched me as I read it. No emotion, just waiting for me to say something. "You're not even surprised, are you?" she said. I didn't answer. I just folded the will, slipped it back into the envelope, and tossed it on the table. She was halfway out the door when she turned around. "By the way," she said, "Mom had one of her prescriptions blocked at the pharmacy. They said the card declined." She broke down in front of the counter. Had to leave empty-handed. I didn't flinch. I just said, "She's the one who made that choice." After she left, I sat there for a while. Not angry, not even sad. Just hollow. That will didn't sting the way it should have. If anything, it confirmed what I already knew. They were never planning on seeing me as part of the family again. Not even in death. Later that night, I opened up one of the old financial dashboards I'd forgotten about. It was still linked to a checking account I'd used during the pandemic when I was managing their bills. The account had maybe $600 in it when I stopped using it. But someone had been using it. Small withdrawals spread out over weeks. $32 here, $19 there. Nothing big until I saw it. Multiple transactions to a gambling site. Then more and more. Each one under my dad's name. I kept scrolling. Hundreds of dollars. It didn't stop. This wasn't just about Mykonos. The vacation was a smokescreen. They weren't just careless. They were sinking, drowning in their own mess and too arrogant to admit it. They needed the trip not because they deserved a break, but because they were spiraling and wanted one last escape on my dime. I'd always wondered how they'd gone from proud, stubborn people to selfish, impulsive liars. But now I saw it clearly. They weren't just trying to hurt me. They were trying to survive. And they thought if they could twist the story hard enough, make me the villain, I'd step back in and save them. But I wasn't that guy anymore. And they still didn't know what was coming. By the end of the month, they were unraveling in real time. I didn't have to guess. It started showing up in small ways. Bank alerts, odd emails, calls from creditors I hadn't heard from in years. Somehow, they'd gotten sloppy and started using old accounts that still had traces of my information tied to them. My name popped up as a backup contact on a credit card I never knew existed. Another listed me as an authorized user from back when I helped them boost their credit after the 2008 crash. They were trying to use every connection they could, probably hoping I wouldn't notice, but I did. I cleaned it all out, called every bank, every lender, removed my name, flagged any attempts. Every time I shut a door, I imagined them behind it, realizing it was locked now, permanently. But the real crack came a week later. I got a call from an old friend of the family, Mr. Blake. He owned a body shop where my dad used to get our cars fixed. He wasn't calling for small talk. "Ethan, your father stopped by here last night. He was drunk. Said some things I didn't really understand, but it sounded bad. He kept saying you destroyed everything. Then he broke a mirror in the office and left without paying." He paused. "I just thought you should know. He's not doing well." I thanked him and hung up. So the house of cards was collapsing. I didn't know how deep the debts went, but it didn't matter. I wasn't paying a cent. They had chosen this. They had written me off publicly on paper. Still, a part of me wanted to know how far they'd fall, not out of cruelty, but because if I was going to walk away for good, I needed to know I wasn't walking away too early. The next surprise came from the hospital billing department. I had listed myself years ago as an emergency contact for my mom. Never updated it. They called to confirm that her insurance had lapsed and she hadn't made payments on her treatments. Apparently, she'd been skipping appointments for weeks. When I asked if she was okay, they said they weren't authorized to disclose anything else. I didn't call her. I didn't send money. She knew how to reach me. She just didn't want to. Then came the final hit, a certified letter. Not from their lawyer this time, directly from my parents. Inside was one line written in permanent marker across a folded sheet of blank paper. You were a mistake. No signature, no return address, just those 4 words. I didn't cry. I laughed quietly, bitterly, because it was almost funny, in a twisted way, how much effort they put into pretending I'd never been part of them, like they could write me out of history with a sentence. I put the letter next to the first one, in the same drawer with the will and the pharmacy receipts. My private little archive of what betrayal looks like when it comes in your own handwriting. That night, I opened a new document on my computer, titled it Final Accounts. Inside, I listed every payment, every loan, every favor, every sacrifice I made for them over the past decade. It was longer than I expected. And at the bottom, I wrote, no repayment needed. Just never speak to me again. Because they were right about one thing. I wasn't their son anymore. Life got quiet. Not peaceful, not calm, just still. Like a room that had been emptied after a storm. No calls, no texts, no passive-aggressive letters, no more drama. The people who used to orbit my life like permanent fixtures had disappeared. And for the first few days, that silence rang louder than their shouting ever had. I knew they weren't coming back. Not in the way people mean when they say that. I knew because they meant every word they wrote in that final letter. Because if you can say you were a mistake and mail it like a legal document, there's nothing left worth saving. So, I started dismantling the last pieces of them from my life. I scrubbed my name off every joint file, every backup contact, every emergency reference. I switched phone numbers, opened new accounts, closed out old subscriptions tied to the house, even canceled my dental coverage because it was still listed under my dad's old plan from years ago. I wanted nothing that could link me back to them. No paper trail, no forgotten connections. It wasn't anger anymore. It was clarity, and it came just in time because not long after, I started getting messages through back channels. Old family friends, neighbors, people I hadn't heard from in years. They weren't checking on me. They were passing on gossip. Apparently, my parents sold the house. Not just sold it, dumped it. Below market, fast, probably to avoid foreclosure. No moving truck. No formal goodbye. They took what they could carry and disappeared. One woman said she saw my mom leaving with a suitcase, crying. Another said she'd heard my dad screaming at someone on the phone in the middle of the night, demanding money. No one knew where they went. Not even my sister, who'd apparently moved in with some guy 2 towns over. I didn't ask for the details. I didn't care. And then came the photo. A neighbor I barely knew anymore sent me a picture, blurry, taken from a distance. My parents sitting outside a rundown motel near the edge of the city. My dad hunched over, looking at the ground. My mom staring at nothing. 2 plastic grocery bags on the sidewalk beside them. No car, no home. Just a stretch of concrete and whatever pride they had left. I stared at the photo for a long time. Not because I wanted to help, because I wanted to feel something. But all I felt was tired. I deleted the photo, blocked the number, got up, made coffee, sat by the window, and thought about how strange it is to outgrow the people who raised you. Not because you're better than them, but because they never grew at all. They stayed the same, entitled, arrogant, cruel. Even when they were weak. I remembered every moment I could have walked away sooner. Every red flag. Every time they guilt-tripped me into paying their bills, taking their calls, showing up for holidays that felt more like negotiations than gatherings. Every time they acted like my help was their right, not my choice. And I thought about that final letter. You were a mistake. I used to think if I did enough, gave enough, endured enough, they'd finally say the opposite, that they were proud, that I mattered. But the truth is, some people only love you when you're useful. And once you stop being useful, they show you what they really are. So I gave myself what they never did, closure. I printed out a final document just for myself. I titled it Severance. Inside, I listed every loan, every payment, every sacrifice, every broken promise. Then I wrote the final line. You were not a mistake. You were the last lesson. I haven't heard from them since. But sometimes when the pain in my joints creeps in and reminds me why I built that reserve fund in the first place, I open that drawer where the letters are still folded neatly, untouched, and I remind myself I didn't lose my family. I finally saw them for who they were, and I walked away while I still could. Sometimes on nights when sleep doesn't come easy, I catch myself thinking about what might have happened if I hadn't checked that bank notification. If I just kept trusting them, letting them drain me dry while smiling to my face, maybe they would have gone again next summer. Maybe to Dubai, maybe somewhere even more ridiculous, and I'd still be footing the bill like a fool. But the truth is, betrayal doesn't start with 10 grand and a luxury suite. It starts smaller, with silence, with little lies, with being told you're selfish when you say no. And once you let that slide enough times, they start to believe the lie too. That you owe them always. Never again. Now on to the next story. Story 8. My family mocked me, for I wasn't as successful as my brother. You will always be in second place, Dad said, laughing. I said, okay. I'm just kicking him out of my house. And that day, growing up, I got used to the idea that I would always come second. Second in grades, second in sports, second in accomplishments, and definitely second in my parents' eyes. My older brother, Lester, was the golden child, the successful one, the talented one, the one they bragged about to friends and family. It wasn't just favoritism. It was a whole other level of obsession. Lester could do no wrong. If I got a B on a test, I didn't work hard enough. If he got a B, the teacher must have graded unfairly. When I got a decent job, my father asked why I didn't aim higher. When Lester got a six-figure salary, they practically threw a party. It was exhausting, but after years of it, I just learned to deal with it. Then everything changed. Lester went bankrupt. He lost everything. His fancy apartment, his car, his savings. The same brother they put on a pedestal suddenly had nowhere to go. And guess who took him in? It was me. Not because I wanted to, but because I couldn't just leave him homeless, no matter how much I resented him. For the past 3 months, he had been living in my apartment, sleeping on my couch, eating my food, and doing absolutely nothing to change his situation. He didn't work, didn't contribute, didn't even try. He just sat there, claiming he was depressed and needed time to figure things out. Meanwhile, I paid for everything. Rent, bills, groceries, and even loaned him $19,000 for a used car because he said, people take you more seriously when you have a car. And what did my parents know about any of this? Nothing. Lester made sure they still saw him as their perfect son. He barely called them, always saying he was busy. He made sure they thought he was still doing well, still successful, still the same Lester they adored. And me? I was still the disappointment, the one who never quite measured up. That all changed on Thanksgiving. We were all at my parents' house, the usual family gathering, turkey, mashed potatoes, the works. Lester showed up late, of course, and made an entrance as he always did. He even parked his car right in front of the house for everyone to see, knowing full well that I had paid for it. When we all sat down, the attention as always was on him. My mom asked him about work, my dad about his investments. My uncle patted him on the back and said, "Still making big moves, huh, Les?" And he played along, lied through his teeth. "Yeah, things are going great. Had to downsize a bit for a new investment, but that's all part of the plan, you know how it is. Short-term sacrifices for long-term success." I sat there, gripping my fork so tightly I thought it might break in half. He wasn't just lying, he was going all out. Then, as if on cue, my dad turned to me. "And you, Kyle? Still at the same job?" I nodded. "Yeah." He grinned and shook his head. "Well, I guess someone has to come in second." The whole table laughed. My mother, my uncle, even my cousin. And Lester, he laughed the hardest. I put down my fork. "Okay," I said, standing up. Then my brother's moving in with you tomorrow. The laughter stopped immediately. For the first time in my life, I had the floor. No one laughed anymore. My dad frowned. My mom blinked like she misheard me, and Lester looked like he just swallowed a fork. "What are you talking about?" my mother asked. I crossed my arms. "I mean, since Lester is so successful, he obviously doesn't need my couch anymore. He can move in with you now." Everyone looked at Lester. His face had gone pale. He let out a short laugh, trying to keep up the act. "Kyle, stop joking around." "I wasn't joking." "Oh, I'm not. I think you should know that your number one son has been living with me for the last 4 months, eating my food, driving a car I paid for with my money because, guess what, Mom, Dad? He's broke. He has nothing." My mother's hand covered her mouth. My dad's expression hardened. My uncle, my aunt, my cousin, they all just stared at Lester. And him? He tried to recover, but he was never as good at thinking on his feet as he liked to think. "That's not true," he scoffed. "You're twisting things." I stepped closer. "Am I? Do you have your own place?" He remained silent. "Do you pay rent?" More silence. "Do you even buy your own toilet paper?" He clenched his jaw, but still nothing. I turned back to my parents. "He's been lying to you for months. He's got nothing, but he wanted you to keep thinking he was still on top. And I let him stay with me even though I couldn't stand him. Even though I paid for everything while he sat around feeling too depressed to do anything." I turned back to Lester. "And how do you repay me? By sitting here laughing at me with them?" No one spoke. You could hear a pin drop. Then my dad, "Mr. Lester can do no wrong," looked at him. "Is that true?" Lester swallowed. "Dad, it's complicated." Mom jumped in. "But Lester, you told us you were investing. You said it was going well." He sighed and rubbed his face. I needed some time. I wanted to tell you." I laughed. "Yeah, when my bank account hits 0. My father pushed back his chair and stood up. His expression was unreadable, which was worse than if he had just gotten angry. "You're telling me you've been living off your brother like a leech while letting us believe you're doing just fine?" Lester opened his mouth, then shut it. For the first time in his life, he had nothing to say. And then my grandmother, sweet, quiet grandmother, shook her head. "Shameful." Lester flinched as if he'd been slapped. I grabbed my jacket. "You guys have fun finding out. I'm done." I walked out. I didn't stay a second longer. I thought that was the end of it. I thought I was finally free of it all. Little did I know that later that night, Lester would show up at my door, drunk, angry, and ready to start war. I didn't go inside right after I left my parents' house. I drove around for a while, letting the cold air clear my head. It should have felt good to finally let it all out, but something still felt heavy in my chest. Maybe because I knew that it wasn't really over. And I was right. When I came home a few hours later, I heard the door unlock. Lester still had a key. I hadn't thought to take it from him before. He walked in, his face tight, his whole body tense as if he'd been holding back anger all the way home. He slammed the door shut a little too hard and turned to face me. "What the hell's wrong with you?" I didn't even look up from my beer. "Not in the mood, Lester. I barely managed to fix what you did back there," he snapped. "Do you even realize what you just pulled?" That got my attention. I put my drink down. "Fix?" he scoffed. "Yes, Kyle. You think I was gonna let you humiliate me in front of everyone? I told them you were just jealous, that you couldn't stand the fact that I was more successful, so you made up some story to make yourself feel better." I stared at him. "You lied again." "I had no choice," he shot back. Mom was freaking out. Dad was pissed. I had to say something. I laughed and shook my head. "Wow, you really are unbelievable. You didn't have to say anything," he snapped. "Everything was fine before you opened your mouth. But no, you had to make it about you. You had to drag me down just because you couldn't stand that they like me more than you." I clenched my jaw. "They didn't like you. They liked the idea of you. And the minute they found out you weren't who they thought you were, they turned on you." "They didn't turn on me," he shot back, "because I fixed it. But now I have to deal with Mom breathing down my neck because of you." Right on cue, my phone started ringing. "Mom." I let it go to voicemail. A few seconds later, it rang again. Lester grinned. Go ahead. Pick it up. I exhaled sharply and answered. What? Her voice was sharp. Why would you lie like that, Kyle? I closed my eyes. There it was. Lie? Yes, Mom. Do you know how humiliating that was? Telling everyone that your brother is broke. Saying he lives with you? Why would you do that? I gritted my teeth. Because it's true. Lester already explained everything. She cut in. He told us that you were just upset that you've always been jealous of him, and that you let your emotions get the best of you. I laughed, really laughed. You really believe that, Kyle? And enough, she snapped. Don't ever do that again. I don't care what problems you have with your brother, but making things up just to embarrass him in front of his family is low. I didn't say anything. I just hung up. Lester grinned. Yeah, that's what I thought. I stood up. Pack your stuff. His smirk faded. What? You're done here, I said. You want to lie to them? Fine. Go live with him. But you're not staying here another night. He let out a short laugh as if he thought I was bluffing. Come on, Kyle. Don't be dramatic. I'm serious. I grabbed my keys. Oh, and keep the car. That actually caught him off guard. Wait, what? The car? I repeated. I'm selling it. His face fell. You can't do that. I smiled. It's in my name, Lester. You never even transferred the title. That means it's mine. And since I paid for it, I think it's only fair that I get my money back now. He panicked. Kyle, come on, don't be like this. You can't just take my car. It's not your car, I corrected. It was never yours. I grabbed my phone and started typing out an offer for the car right in front of him. His face twisted in frustration, but he could see I wasn't kidding. He swallowed, then grabbed his duffel bag from the corner. He hesitated for a second as if waiting for me to take it back. When I didn't, he scoffed and shook his head. You're a real piece of work. You know that? I just held the door open. Goodbye, Lester. And just like that, he was gone. But the fallout was just beginning. For the first time in months, my apartment felt like my own again. No Lester taking up space on my couch. No empty beer bottles he never bothered to clean up. No more excuses about why he still couldn't get a job. I thought it was finally over. Then my phone rang. I looked at the screen. It was my dad. I considered ignoring it, but something told me to answer it. Kyle, he said, his voice tense. We need you to come over. I sighed. Why? A pause. Then, it's about Lester. I should have known. When I got to my parents' house, I could tell something was wrong. My mom was sitting on the couch with her arms crossed, looking irritated and confused. My father stood by the fireplace, rubbing his forehead as if he had a headache. My cousin was there too, sitting quietly in the corner, looking like he was just there for the drama. And Lester? He was slumped in a chair, looking defensive. As soon as I walked in, my mom turned to me. Kyle, your brother says the real reason you kicked him out is because you're in love with his ex-girlfriend. I stopped. What? Lester sat up and nodded like it was a perfectly logical explanation. Yeah, Jenna, you've always had a thing for her. Ever since we got together, you've been jealous, and when we broke up, you saw your chance. That's why you left on Thanksgiving. You just wanted me out of the way. I blinked. Are you actually crazy? My dad exhaled loudly. That's what we're trying to find out. Lester leaned forward. Come on, just admit it. You always wanted what I had. My success, my car, my place in this family. And now you want her too. I laughed. I really laughed. I couldn't help it. I looked at my parents. You can't seriously be listening to this. My mother frowned. I didn't believe him at first. But then I thought, why else would you humiliate him like that in front of the family? I let out a sharp breath. Because he's broke. Because he lived off me for months while he lied to all of you. Lester scoffed. That's what you want them to think. I turned to my father. You don't believe that, do you? My dad crossed his arms. I think it's a ridiculous excuse. But if it's not true, then why is Lester sitting here unemployed with no money, no car, and no plan? Finally, they got it. I looked at Lester. Tell them where your car is. He clenched his jaw. I turned to my dad. I sold it. My dad frowned. Wait, you weren't bluffing? Nope. I pulled out my phone, opened my banking app and held up the screen. Right there, $19,000. The car's gone. Lester sank deeper into his chair. My mom stared at him. So it was true? He remained silent. My father sighed and rubbed his temple. Jesus Christ, Lester. My cousin shook his head. Damn, man. You really thought that excuse was going to work. Lester gave him a look but said nothing. My dad looked at me. What do you think we should do? I shrugged. Not my problem. Lester jumped up. Kyle, come on, no? I cut him off. You lied to her again. You tried to turn them against me like you always do. But guess what? It didn't work this time. Now you can clean up your own mess. I turned to leave, but my father spoke again. Kyle. I looked back at him. He sighed. I know we haven't been fair to you, and maybe if we had been, we wouldn't be in this situation. That was the closest he came to an apology. I nodded. Yeah, maybe. Then I walked out, leaving Lester to face the truth for the first time in his life. But somehow, he still wasn't done trying to drag me down with him. 12 days later, it was my mom's birthday. I wasn't planning on going after everything that happened. I figured it was best to keep my distance, but when she called and personally invited me, I could tell something was different. We want you to come, she said. Everyone's going to be there. There was something in her tone, something I hadn't heard before. I wasn't sure what it was, but curiosity got the better of me, so I went. When I walked in, the house was packed. Relatives, family friends, even some neighbors. My uncle was pouring drinks, my aunt was setting out food, and my dad was in the middle of a loud conversation with some of the cousins. It felt like every other family gathering, except for the fact that for once, the attention wasn't on me. It was on Lester, and not in a good way. I spotted him near the kitchen, looking like he wanted to disappear. His smile was tight, his posture stiff, and he kept glancing at the door like he was debating making a run for it. That's when I knew something was about to go down. I grabbed a drink and leaned against the wall, waiting. Then it started. My dad clapped a hand on Lester's shoulder. So, Lester, how's work going? Lester tensed. Just figuring things out. Oh yeah? My uncle chimed in. Any big investments lately? Lester forced a laugh. I've got some things in the works. That's when my grandma, sweet, old, never miss a church service grandma, shook her head and said, he's unemployed. The room fell silent. Then my cousin snorted, and then just like that, the laughter started. It spread like wildfire. My uncle was laughing, my aunt was laughing, even the neighbors were chuckling. My dad wiped a fake tear from his eye. Oh, that's rich. Lester, unemployed? No, that can't be right. Not our Lester. Oh, but it is right, my mom said, sipping her wine. Not only is he unemployed, but he's also living with us. The room exploded with laughter again. My other cousin leaned over to my uncle. Hey, maybe we should get him an application for McDonald's. Oh, come on, my dad said, still laughing. That's too generous. Maybe a paper route first. More laughter. I just stood there sipping my drink, soaking it all in. For 25 years, Lester was the perfect son. The one they bragged about, the one they adored, the one I could never measure up to. And now they were tearing him apart in front of everyone. Sweet, beautiful revenge. Lester clenched his jaw, gripping his drink like he wanted to throw it all. Very funny, he said. Oh no, let's keep going. My uncle grinned. What about that car you had, the one you showed off last time? What happened to that? I smiled. I knew what was coming. My mom sighed dramatically. Oh, you mean the car Kyle bought him? The one that got sold because it wasn't actually his. The laughter doubled. My aunt was practically in tears. Lester looked like he was about to burst a blood vessel. Mom! Oh, I just think it's funny, she said, smirking. We spent years telling Kyle he'd always be second place, and now it turns out the golden boy was just a fraud. I took another sip of my drink. This was better than any revenge I could have planned. For once, I didn't have to defend myself. I didn't have to prove anything. They had finally seen Lester for what he really was. And the best part? I didn't have to lift a finger. I just stood there and enjoyed the show. Lester never recovered from that night. After the party, he never showed his face at family gatherings. Not that anyone missed him. The golden boy act was over, and with nothing to brag about, my parents' patience was wearing thin. He had no choice but to get a job, and ironically, the McDonald's joke wasn't a joke anymore. Yep, Lester now works at McDonald's. The same guy who used to walk around in $1,000 suits bragging about his deals is now wearing a name tag and asking people if they want their fries supersized. And the best part? My parents hate it. At first, they tried to tell themselves it was temporary. He just needs time to figure things out, my mother said. It's a stepping stone, my father added. But months went by and nothing changed. He's still living in their house, still eating their food, still refusing to face the fact that this is his life now. And they hate it. They fight constantly. My mother complains about the grocery bill. My dad tells him to get it together. My grandmother won't even look at him. The same parents who used to adore him now see him as a burden. And me? Well, for the first time in my life, they actually treat me like a human being. They ask me how my work is going. They invite me to dinner without making snide comments. My dad even called me the other day just to chat, which was the strangest thing of all. Do I forgive them? No, not really. They're narcissists. They didn't suddenly have a change of heart. They just lost their favorite child and needed someone to fill the space. But it is what it is. I'll take the courtesy, but I'll never forget how they treated me for 25 years. Lester used to be the one who looked down on me. Now he's the disappointment in the family. And for the first time in my life, I'm totally okay with coming in second. Now on to the next story. Story 9. Family excluded me from a Christmas trip to Tahiti. This is no place for cheap like you, Mom said, and blocked me. I got angry and emptied the joint account. Then I received 25 calls. You know the saying about family being your safe haven? Yes, for me it was the opposite. My family treated me like a servant. I'm the youngest of 3 sisters, and growing up, my mom and my older sisters, Rachel and Kelly, made sure I knew my place. I wasn't a person with dreams or feelings. I was their errand girl, maid, and sometimes even punching bag. It wasn't just about chores. They controlled every aspect of my life. If I dared to say no to something, Rachel or Kelly would get in my face, sometimes even push me around. They made threats, and the worst part, my mom was always on their side. Even after I started working, they didn't let up. I got an online job after college, but any money I made became family money. I paid bills, bought groceries, and provided for their little luxuries. I didn't even complain. I was too afraid to. Then came Christmas. I could tell for weeks that something was up. There were secret whispered conversations, lots of online shopping, but I figured maybe they were planning a surprise or a party. I didn't ask any questions. Frankly, I didn't want to get yelled at for being nosy. A few days before Christmas Eve, they casually told me they were going on a long trip. Pack light, Kelly had said. We need the house to ourselves to get ready before we leave. They didn't even bother to say where they were going. I assumed a weekend at some resort nearby. The idea of them leaving me home alone actually gave me a little relief, peace, and quiet for once. So I just packed a small bag and got ready to lay low until they returned. The day after they left, though, reality hit me like a truck. I woke up to a bunch of texts from Rachel. They were photos of her, Kelly, and my mom posing in bikinis on a beach that looked like something out of a travel magazine. White sand, clear blue water, palm trees. A caption read, "Greetings from Tahiti. Wish you were here. Just kidding," winking face. I stared down at my phone, completely stunned. They hadn't just gone on some random trip. They were in freaking Tahiti, and not once had they told me. Not once did they ask if I wanted to come. Just like that, I was dumped, left behind like I didn't exist. I texted my mom and asked why they didn't invite me. No reply. I kept texting, still nothing. Then I called. She finally picked up. "This is no place for someone as cheap as you," she said before hanging up. Cheap? After all the money I spent to support her? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I called again, but she blocked me. That was the breaking point. Years of being used, ignored, and belittled all came crashing down at once. I was done. I logged on to the joint account we shared. It was where most of my paycheck had gone, and I emptied it every cent. Then I froze it all. I didn't even hesitate. Let them enjoy their tropical vacation. Now I was done being their doormat. Within minutes, my phone was exploding with calls. 25 missed calls. All from Rachel and Kelly. I ignored every one of them. They could yell all they wanted. For once, I was in control, and that was just the beginning. The calls continued for hours. At first, I stayed strong and ignored each one, but curiosity got the best of me, and I checked the messages they left. The first few were filled with indignation. "Where's the money?" Rachel screeched in one message. "Put it back right now, Amanda, or you're going to regret this," Kelly warned in another. I grinned. They were panicking. Good. Let them feel powerless for once. But then the tone of their messages changed. The next ones were softer, almost desperate. "Come on, Amanda, you can't be serious." My mother's voice pleaded in one of the messages. "We need the money for the trip. We'll talk about it when we get home. Okay?" Oh, now they wanted to talk? How convenient. After a while, I got tired of the constant buzzing and turned my phone to silent. I spent the next few days enjoying the silence. No yelling, no demands, no insults, just me and my thoughts. It felt strangely freeing. For once, I could breathe without them hovering over me. But I didn't want to just sit around and mope. I wanted to hit them where it really hurt. So, I did something I never thought I'd have the guts to do. I booked a flight, but not to Tahiti. No, I had another plan. While they were still sunbathing and sipping cocktails, I flew to California to meet with a lawyer. You see, that house we lived in? It wasn't fully paid off, and guess whose name was on the mortgage? Since I was the one making the payments, mine. Legally, I had partial ownership, something I had never thought to use before. But now I was done being passive. I filed paperwork to remove her access to the joint account and took steps to claim control of the house. It didn't take long for the news to reach them. As soon as they found out, my phone started blowing up again. New numbers, unknown callers. I knew it was them. I finally answered one of Rachel's calls just to hear the panic in her voice. "Amanda, what the hell are you doing?" she yelled. "Fixing my life," I said, and hung up. The next day, I got a text message from a number I didn't recognize. It read, "You think you're smart, huh? You won't get away with this. We'll be back soon." I shrugged it off. Let them come back. I wasn't afraid anymore. But then something unexpected happened. While I was waiting for my legal paperwork to be completed, I got a call from the bank. Someone had tried to access the joint account pretending to be me. They hadn't passed security verification, and the bank had flagged the attempt. I knew exactly who it was. They were desperate. A week later, the day finally arrived. My mother and sisters were back from Tahiti, and they stormed into the house like a hurricane. But they weren't prepared for what they found. They barged into the house like they owned it. Rachel and Kelly threw their suitcases on the floor, while my mom stormed toward me with this wild, angry look in her eyes. "What have you done, Amanda?" she screamed. "Where's the money?" I didn't flinch. For once, I wasn't afraid. I stood my ground. "It's gone. And don't bother trying to access the account. You're all locked out now." Kelly stepped forward as if she was going to swing at me. That's how things usually went. Intimidation, threats, maybe even a physical shove. But this time, I folded my arms and said, "Try me. I dare you. Next time, I'll call the police." She froze. I could see the confusion in her eyes. This wasn't the Amanda they were used to. They didn't know how to deal with me anymore. I think that scared them more than anything. Rachel cut in, "You're acting crazy. You think you can just screw us over like this? We're family." I laughed. An actual bitter laugh. "Family? You mean the same family that treats me like garbage? The family that left me behind to rot while you went on a luxury vacation? That's not fair," my mother snapped. "We needed a break, Amanda. You wouldn't have liked it anyway. You're always so negative." "Right?" I said, rolling my eyes. "Negative because I paid for everything while you all spent my money? But don't worry, I've made sure that won't happen again. Then came the bombshell I'd been saving. I have already begun the process of taking full control of this house, I said calmly. Either you follow my rules now, or you can pack your bags and find somewhere else to live. Silence. I swear you could hear a pin drop. For the first time, they were speechless. Mom's face turned red, and Rachel and Kelly started arguing with each other, clearly panicking. You can't do this. Rachel finally blurted out. We helped pay for this house. No, you didn't, I shot back. I have bank statements that prove I've been paying the mortgage for years. You spent all your money on vacations and shopping sprees. So yes, I can do this, and I am. Mom tried to guilt me next. She softened her voice and gave me that fake sad look she always used to manipulate me. Honey, you're being dramatic. We're family. Let's just talk about this like adults. No, I said, shaking my head. We're not sweeping this under the rug anymore. You're gonna start paying your own way. That means rent, bills, and whatever else you need. Otherwise, you can leave. Rachel and Kelly exploded at this, yelling at each other about how unfair I was being. They called me selfish, ungrateful, and every other insult imaginable. I stood there and let them rant. The power dynamic had completely shifted, and they knew it. Then I pulled out my ace in the hole. Oh, by the way, I added casually, I recorded some of our past interactions. You know, the times you yelled at me and pushed me around and treated me like dirt. I have them backed up, and if you try anything stupid, I won't hesitate to send them to the authorities. Maybe even your employers. The color drained from Rachel's face. Kelly's jaw clenched so tight I thought she might break a tooth. I had receipts, and they knew it. My mother finally broke the silence. Okay, fine. We'll talk about the rent and the bills. But Amanda, don't do anything you're going to regret. Oh, I'm not the one who's going to regret anything, I said. Trust me. With that, I walked away, leaving her standing there in stunned silence. For once, I was the one in control, and it felt damn good. The next few days were tense. My mother and sisters tried to act as if nothing had happened. They tiptoed around me like I was a ticking time bomb. It was almost funny. The same people who used to bully and belittle me suddenly didn't know how to handle me now that I had power. But I wasn't done yet. I spent those days securing my position. I met with the lawyer again and finalized the paperwork that would give me full control of the house. It wasn't a total eviction plan yet, but it meant that if they stepped out of line again, I had the legal right to make them leave. I made sure they knew that as well. Rachel tried to be sneaky about it. She pulled me aside one afternoon with that fake smile on her face. Hey, Amanda, I've been thinking. We got off on the wrong foot. Maybe we should sit down and talk about how we can work together, work together. I raised an eyebrow. You mean like you worked me to death for years? She flinched but quickly recovered. Okay, I know we had problems, but we're still sisters. We could help each other. Maybe if you let me handle some of the finances. I laughed in her face. Yeah, no. You're not getting near my money again. I walked away before she could even answer. Later that night, however, things got weird. I was in my room when I heard someone shuffling outside my door. At first, I thought it was one of them, curious. But then I saw the shadow of someone slipping something under the door. It was a piece of paper. I picked it up and read it. It said, "You are not safe here. They're planning something." My stomach dropped. The handwriting didn't look familiar. Who had sent this? I opened the door and looked around, but the hall was empty, just silence. At first, I thought it might be a prank, but something about it felt wrong. I didn't know who to trust. The next day, I stayed on high alert. I kept to myself and watched how Rachel, Kelly, and my mom acted around me. They seemed normal to them, but every now and then, I would catch them whispering to each other in hushed tones. When I entered the room, they'd quickly shut up and act casual. By evening, I had had enough. I had to know what was going on. I pretended to go to bed early, but instead, I stayed up listening through the vents in my room. Eventually, I heard them talking downstairs. Rachel was whispering, but her voice carried just enough. We can't just let her ruin everything. We have to take back control. She's gone too far, Kelly muttered. Maybe if we scare her. No, My mother interrupted. We have to be careful. She's serious this time. If we push too hard, she'll call the cops. My heart raced. They were definitely up to something, but the question was what? I wasn't going to wait around to find out. The next morning, I pretended I hadn't heard anything. I went about my day as usual, but inside, I was on edge. They were up to something. I just didn't know what. I kept replaying their conversation in my head. Scare me? Control me again. Not this time. Later that afternoon, I decided to get out and clear my head. I went to a coffee shop across town, ordered a latte, and just sat there thinking. I also couldn't shake the strange note from last night. Who had slipped it under my door? It couldn't have been one of them. Why would they warn me then? Then my phone buzzed. It was a text message from an unknown number. Leave the house tonight. They're not messing around. You don't want to be around when it happens. I stared at the message and my hands started to shake. This wasn't paranoia anymore. Someone knew what was going on. I texted back, "Who is this?" but got no reply. I tried calling the number, but it went straight to voicemail. I spent the rest of the day running in circles in my head. Should I leave? Was this some elaborate game to mess with my head? Or was I really in danger? When I got home, the sun was setting. The house was quiet, almost too quiet. Usually, Rachel and Kelly would be watching TV or arguing about something trivial, but tonight it was like the house was holding its breath. I went to my room, locked the door, and double-checked the windows, just in case. Then I sat on my bed and waited. Hours passed. Nothing happened. I began to think that maybe I'd overreacted, but just as I was about to fall asleep, I heard footsteps outside my room. Softly, slow, deliberate. Then came the whispering. I couldn't make out what they were saying, but I knew it was them. The footsteps stopped right outside my door. My heart pounded in my chest. I stayed still and listened. A few seconds later, someone tried the doorknob. It rattled slightly, but the door didn't move. Then there was a soft knock. "Amanda, are you awake?" It was Kelly's voice, but something about it was off. Too calm, too controlled. I didn't answer. She tapped again, harder this time. "Come on, I know you're in there. We just want to talk." "Yeah, right." I remained silent. Eventually, the knocking stopped and I heard footsteps retreating, but I didn't let my guard down. Something was seriously wrong. The next morning, I made a decision. I wasn't going to stay in that house anymore. They were up to something and I wasn't going to wait around to see what it was. But before I could put my plan into action, things took another turn. I was packing a bag when my phone buzzed again. Another text message from the unknown number. "They're getting desperate. They won't let you leave so easily. Be smart." Whoever was sending these messages knew exactly what was going on. I texted back, "What do they want from me? Why are you helping me?" This time, I got a reply, "They think you've taken too much control. They'll do anything to take it back. As for me, let's just say I know what it's like to be in your shoes." The message sent a shiver down my spine. Someone had been through this before. But who, and why were they on my side now? I had been on high alert all day. I could feel it in the air. Something was going to happen, and soon. I packed a suitcase in case I had to leave quickly. But I still didn't have all the answers. Who had warned me, and what exactly were Rachel, Kelly, and my mother planning? That night, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I peeked through the curtains. My jaw almost hit the floor. It was my dad. Now, here's the thing, you wouldn't know it from the way Mom talked about him, but my dad was no deadbeat. He and my mom had been divorced for years, and she never let us have much of a relationship with him. He lived out of state, and whenever I tried to reach out, Mom would guilt me with things like, "Oh, now you're going to betray the family?" Eventually, I stopped trying. But here he was, standing on the porch with a serious look on his face. I cautiously opened the door. "Dad." "Hey, Amanda," he said as he stepped inside. "We need to talk." How did you know to come?" He sighed and gave me an annoying look. "I got a call from someone who was worried about you. Said things were getting ugly around here." "Was it you who sent those texts?" I asked, my mind racing. "No, but I know who did," he replied. It was your Aunt Lisa. Aunt Lisa. She was my mother's estranged sister. I hadn't seen her in years, but I knew that she and Mom had a falling out over money. Apparently, Lisa had been keeping tabs on the family from afar. She must have heard about the power struggle and decided to get involved behind the scenes. Listen, Dad continued. Your mom and sisters, they're not going to stop. I know how your mom works. She's afraid you're going to take control of everything, and it's making her desperate. But you're not in this alone anymore. I'm here to support you. Hearing those words gave me a strength I didn't know I needed. For the first time, I didn't feel like I was fighting this battle alone. Dad didn't waste any time. Here's the plan, he said. We're going to sit them down and make things clear. They have a legal right to this house, and if they don't respect that, they're out on the street. I'll be here to make sure they don't try any funny business. We didn't have to wait long. My mom, Rachel, and Kelly came home that night, still unaware of Dad's presence. When they saw him, their faces fell. What are you doing here? Mom spat, crossing her arms. I'm here to help Amanda, he said calmly, and to make sure you understand something. This is her house now. You either play by her rules or you're out. Rachel and Kelly immediately started screaming, throwing out every excuse and insult they could think of. You don't get it, Rachel yelled. She screwed us. She's ungrateful. We raised her, Kelly added. Mom tried to play the victim again. You don't know what she's done to this family. Enough, Dad said, cutting her off. His voice was calm but firm. I know exactly what's been going on. Amanda's been supporting all of you for years, and you've been taking advantage of her. That ends now. They tried to argue, but it was useless. Dad wasn't going to back down, and neither was I. I'm done being your servant, I said. From now on, you pay your own way. If you can't handle that, then leave. I've already spoken to a lawyer. I have full control of this house, and I'm not afraid to use it. The shock on their faces was priceless. They had no more leverage. For once, they realized they'd lost. In the end, they had no choice but to agree. Over the next few days, I set clear limits. They began to pay rent and cover their own expenses. The atmosphere in the house changed completely. They were no longer in control, and they knew it. As for Dad, he stayed for a while to help me get things in order. We began to rebuild our relationship, something I thought was lost forever. Aunt Lisa even reached out to me and told me she was proud of how I was standing up for myself. It wasn't just about taking control of the house. It was about taking control of my life, and for the first time, I finally felt free. That's it. Everything is resolved, and Amanda finally got the justice she deserved. Let me know what you think. We have reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us your thoughts about the stories in the comments section. Thank you and see you in the next video.